Came here with the key to go in. He said, I have a bad news for you. And the wall outside, this is a patio wall outside the place before you go to the co-op. The whole building, 935, four of them, based on the age and water and termites and all of these, all the bins must be repaired and things. And they started from the C, which is before D. They doing that one, coming toward my place. Two walls had, I don't know, previous owner, 20, 30 years, whatever, had an arch on that to see the beauty of this community has. And actually that was the reason that we bought it, because I thought it's beautiful. We didn't know they made it. And said, you have to go and talk to Mr. Gavin Fogg, the inspection supervisor, Gavin, yes. I didn't go inside. It's the first hour, key in my hand. I almost fainted in the chair and said, go and talk to him. I run to the office, and he was nice that gave a meeting and saw my feeling and said, okay, come on and talk. And they said, these two walls, because has this arch, we are not touching. And I said, this is not based on the arch. This is based on damage that water, and the whole 935, whole building is doing that one. And what is this to me in this 1 hour? And I asked, when did you notice that one? He said, 2 days ago. And I said, then why you didn't say to the agent seller or tell me or stop the escrow, keep going? And they said, well, this is the process. And I said, okay, why I should be in this middle? And I find it for the first hour. So the story short that they just left yesterday. They left these two. They did all. The one building for me has 3 walls. They did 1 wall. They didn't do these 2 walls. And this is nothing based on the arch. It's based on, you can see, I have pictures, I have videos from them, and I'm going to show you that is based on the damage after. And Mr. Jeff told me that this is based on 30 years, between 30 to 50 years being in this situation. Eventually, wood is going to happen like that. That's why we are coming and changing. So they change all of these 2, but not these 2 wall, and then they left it. And I received a notice from Mr. Gavin again, 30 days notice that I have to correct that one. I have a nightmare for 20 days. I didn't laugh for a second. I am stuck in this. All the stuff brought it to this place and stack up there. We don't know what we should do. And honestly, I don't have anything. All I had to put it in this place and bought it. And I am just coming to ask you to help me. This is nothing based on the damage. This is the damage of the age, a damage of the dry, and then the water that goes to the wall based on operation coordinator, Mr. Jeff, that says. And he emailed to Mr. Gavin about all of this information. But Mr. Gavin didn't give it to the seller agent, or I didn't know until I totally screwed on. And basically, I am here. So I'm here to helping me and let me know what can I do, what kind of help I can get. 3 days ago, I was so sad that my blood pressure goes so up that my husband called 911 even. So it's just a nightmare. 20 days we're sitting in the middle of the living room, both of us. And I put pressure on myself because he already has heart attack. I don't want my husband get worse than this. So I am really asking for help. I don't know. I don't know what should I do with this situation that happened, unfortunately, to me on the same day, on February 6th, that I bought this place.
Okay. I understand that, and I empathize with you, okay? And the M&C committee, okay, while we have a lot of clout here, okay, and I hate to do this to you, okay, but I think my friend over here at the Resident Advisory Committee, because he's got people from staff that actually help people with things like that. And I think we should probably run it through them, okay? Unless, Vilni, do you know anything about this matter at this particular point in time?
The member is referring to original past. The member is referring to original wood-framed patio walls that had been modified through a variance process through our Permits and Alterations Standards Committee. And so because of that, the mutual has a policy that identifies that when a member or its predecessors has modified or make upgrades to a building's unit, they are financially responsible.
But this is the arch didn't do that. The place, the beams, and everything based on Mr. Javlog is all original. This is nothing changed. This is nothing that we touch it. Actually, we didn't touch at all anything. We were there just 20 days there, and we found it in the first hour. Actually, community found it before that. My question is why they didn't put a stop? Why didn't even tell us? Why the community didn't tell us, okay, this is the happen? Because they have all email, they know the transfer is gonna happen, and I don't know. I'm just saying it's a lack of connection between community to the
I agree
Laguna
with what
Woods.
you're saying, and right now, we don't have the protocol in place, okay, to make that happen. We do the inspections of the unit prior to you getting approval to buy it, but that usually happens like a couple of weeks in advance, and a couple of days in advance of that, if they found this, what we should have probably done, okay, is notify the
Yes.
real estate broker and what have you, okay, but that's not the protocol that we use, and as a result of that, this slipped through the crack, okay? And it only slipped through the crack because we don't have any specific rules that cover 2 days before the sale, okay? And I understand what you're saying, because there was a situation recently with another owner who had a problem whereby they had covered their bathtub with a glaze, okay? And they hadn't changed any of the plumbing, and there was a problem in the pipe in the plumbing, okay, which had nothing to do with the glaze, and they said that that particular thing was an alteration, so they couldn't touch it. There are issues like that, and I think resident advisory with those people would probably be able to help you a lot more than the M&C committee at this particular point in time. I empathize with your situation, and I agree with you, something should have happened, okay, but it did not. And right now, we're just working within the rules that we have, but we should make some considerations for why it happened, where it happened. And yes, this is something that you modified, but the modification had nothing to do with the actual problem that caused the occurrence. And that's an issue that we're resolving with other people also. So why don't you get with Resident Advisory Committee and talk to them?
What should I do? What is my next
Miss,
step?
my name is Cash. I am not on the Resident Advisory Committee, but the next Resident Advisory is on 11th, Wednesday.
I thought you were on there.
I'm not the chair. I'm not, yeah.
I'm on resident advisory.
Yeah, she is. But give us your name again, because I don't have it.
AZAR,
A-V-A.
A-Z as zebra, A-R,
A-Z-A-R,
yes,
Azar?
Yes.
Okay. And your minor is 925D,
935D.
935D, okay.
B, like
D
D
as
like
daddy.
boy, okay.
No, D as daddy. D as dog.
D as dog.
D as dog. Oh,
I was
sorry.
right.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
You were right.
935D, and your name is Azar,
Correct.
and I will look into it, and please attend the 11th Wednesday advisory meeting.
Wednesday, March 11?
This
11?
coming month, March 11th.
But however, Mr. Chair or Mr. Cash, I have a 30 days notice. I am devastated. I don't know what
Let me
should I
look
do with
into
that
it and
30
get
days
back to you.
notice.
If you want to give me your phone number, I'll give you a call.
I write down my phone number.
Okay.
I'm gonna,
All right.
Okay.
We'll try to help you, but basically what I would say is you have been given the first inspection notice, and these things you have to watch. And it is not our job to look in
No.
to, in a sense, hold on, to, when something is altered, that is not covered by United Mutual. So we will have to look into this. I will look into it and get back to you, okay?
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
But
you.
I understand what you says. This is nothing. This is the whole
We
building,
will
the whole
look into it.
935.
Let us look into
Four
it.
of them. And, Mr. Chair, you said that just 2 days. This is not about 2 days before that. When they started the 935A and then B and C, I am D. This is about 3 weeks that before that, they know the whole building.
Could
They
be.
knew about that. If they goes to the court or something, we can prove it way before they knew. They have to put a note to the seller agent, to us, to someone. They didn't disclose to us even exist such a things until February 6th that I am there in the first
Okay.
hour.
We understand.
We understand. We want to help you,
okay?
and
Thank you
welcome
so
to the
much.
There were
neighborhood.
extenuating circumstances here, and probably should have been notified. You don't know all the things, and I'm sure if you wanted to really go to court on this, you may basically do. But we don't want to get involved in that. We just want to basically try to resolve your issue, okay?
Thank you so much.
That's-
So
We will
you
try
are-
to help you, okay?
Thank you. And I'm not doing anything about that 30 days notice at this moment. Am I right?
30 days from when? Today? Yesterday?
No, from February 12th.
Okay.
I think basically we need to contact the compliance people
Yeah.
and specifically say that the 30 days has got to be extended because.
Yeah, we
of
will extend
extenuating
that.
Okay, thank you
circumstances.
so much.
Okay. Thank you for bringing
And
it to our
this is
attention.
on record right now as part of this committee here, okay?
Thank you.
So we will make sure that we try to get an extension for you, okay, on this 30 days because we understand your problem. It's a situation that has extenuating circumstances. It's not.
I really appreciate your help. Thank you so much, committee. Thank you.
The next member comment is from Marie Montoya.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marie Montoya, and I live at 245A Calle Aragon. And I'm here today because I wanted to present a proposal to you. I'm looking to see if the board is interested in helping me put a cement walkway in from, I'm on the end unit of 245, and I have handouts here that have a map and pictures so you could see exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm proposing that a cement walkway be put in between my unit 245A and the building 246. Reason is because everyone uses that path, even though there is no cement walkway to walk their dogs. I've even many times seen HOA workers park on the street on Calle Aragon and walk through that path. And it creates, especially in the winter, a big muddy mess right in front of my unit on the cement there. So if you'd like to take a look, I have these handouts for you that I can show you exactly what I'm proposing.
Okay, why don't you give those to,
But she has to submit them first.
you can give them to them, okay, but then we will have to discuss how we can put this through the system, okay, and your request, okay? And I don't remember what the situation is here. Do you have any suggestions here, Delwyn?
Have you gone to the resident services and through,
The only thing I've
Requesting
done with
the
resident services is ask for advice, where I start, and
and that's when you came here?
that's when I came here.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
because we're in charge of those types of things, okay?
That's
However,
the GRF, right?
however, it would be united because it's between two buildings and united, okay? So under the circumstances.
Okay, so we're in.
This is the same thing with regard to ramps that we've been having requests for on various other things. So this would go into that same category. And I just don't know how those things have started in the past. We've gotten requests here for that.
Okay, well, in any case, if there's something else I need to do or someone else I need to speak to about this, I'd be happy to go through whatever channels I need
Yeah.
to see if I can get this done.
We understand, and right now, we'll take a look at the information that you have, okay? And
Okay.
you've got your name and address and
I've got my
telephone
name,
number there?
address, phone number, email
Okay.
on there.
Then we'll
And
have
I've
to-
given her 8 copies. I actually have way more if you need more, but there's 8 copies there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
We'll go through that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your time.
No more member comments.
Okay. So next we've got the department head update.
There are no department updates at this time.
We don't have a department head update, okay? So next is the consent calendar. Now, with regard to the project log, since we're going to be going over the project log, we should probably pull the project log out of the consent calendar. Because we're going to be reviewing that as part of our review here. Any other people on the committee that want to pull any of the other things out of the consent calendar? If not, then we will just ask for a motion to accept the consent calendar with the exception of the project log.
I'll make a motion to take project logs out of the consent calendar.
Any objection to that? Okay, now, let's have a motion to accept the consent calendar without the project log. Reza Cash seconds it. Any objections to approve the consent calendar as it's currently noted? Without objection, the consent calendar without the project log has been accepted. Okay. Next item on the agenda is review of TEC's Energy Priority Work Plan and Deliverables PowerPoint presentation. And I suspect that's this here.
Yes.
Yes.
And I suspect everybody was given a copy of it.
I need to do anything to have it show up there?
We have Lauren Seymour here from TEC to do the presentation, and I believe we also have a staff member calling in.
Yes. Brandon, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Lauren Seymour. I'm a project manager with the Energy Coalition, or TEC, or TEC. And I have on the line with me Brandon Knight from TRC. And TRC provided the bulk of the analysis and recommendations on the report, since they are the expert technical engineers that were on this project. The Energy Coalition is a 50c3 nonprofit, and we empower communities to jump into a clean energy future. We realize that you have a lot of competing priorities, some of which we've heard today, so just want to thank you for the time that's been spent on this project to date, and for taking the time to have us here today. Our aim is to make sure we are accomplishing your goals and doing all that we can to support that. So today we're going to be reviewing the task 1, which was the electrical infrastructure assessments. And then we'll spend some time reviewing task 2 as well. And then just ask that you hold questions until the end of each presentation. We'll do task 1 first and then the task 2 next. And then Brandon and I can answer those for you. Okay, so just a quick agenda here. We'll look at the task 1 scope review, the electrical infrastructure assessment. So we'll look at the objectives, methodology, findings, and recommendations. And then we'll go into task 2 so that we can hopefully align on implementation and next steps, and then take any remaining questions at the end. All right. So before we dive in, I want to define what electrical infrastructure is. So I have this diagram here to help everyone understand what was embedded in the project. For task one, the project team was tasked with performing an assessment of the current electrical infrastructure at Laguna Woods. And the assessment contains detailed information associated with the electrical infrastructure components, as well as recommended short-term and long-term recommendations. So I want to provide a few definitions of the electrical infrastructure and the equipment needed to carry grid-supplied electricity to the end user. The assessment we conducted focuses on the local electrical infrastructure. So that's what's shown here in the gray box. So from the transformer to the end user, which would be the residents here. So the transformer is a static oil-filled device which transforms the voltage level. It can either increase or decrease the voltage level to keep the power and frequency constant. And when Tech and TRC came on board as the energy consultant, we heard numerous concerns about aging infrastructure and SCE transformer failures. Transformers can fail for a number of reasons, including the end of life, manufacturing flaws, or electrical overloads. The electrical meter measures electric energy consumed, and then the electrical switchgear is made up of various pieces of electrical equipment used to distribute power to individual electric loads. So that could be your regular outlets, AC units, electric ovens, etc. And the switchgear provides protection when electrical incidents such as overloads or equipment failure occur. And switchgear is a general term comprised of a single electrical panel or assembly of panels on which there are mounted switches, fuses, instruments, and other electrical equipment used to serve the electrical load. And overload on the switchgear can cause outages. Next is the sub-panel. So there's separate smaller electrical panel that's fed from a larger piece of switchgear and serves other electrical loads. And then the circuit is a path between two or more points along which an electrical current can be carried. So in our case, this is a conductor or a wire that serves an outlet or an elevator or other electrical load. And again, circuits can become overloaded and they can burn up. So now that we have those definitions and brief overview, let's dive into the United Mutual findings. So just to do a high-level review of the Task 1 scope for the electrical infrastructure assessment, here I have this slide. So the task was to perform an assessment of the community's current electrical infrastructure with the deliverable as the electrical infrastructure assessment report that we'll be reviewing. As indicated in the scope of work, our approach was to perform a review of the community's electrical system and infrastructure for the current state. And so our objectives in conducting the assessment was to identify deficiencies and upgrades required to accommodate the existing load. And so in doing so, we aim to address the following questions. For prioritized action, what does United Mutual need to address now to avoid outages and damages to electrical infrastructure equipment? And then in the long term, what should United Mutual focus on in the next 5 to 10 years to ensure electrical infrastructure can withstand increasing EV charging loads? And the long-term action would be addressed in depth as part of Task 2. So the first step was data gathering. So various sources were shared by VMS, including site and electrical plans. We also reviewed previous energy reports that had been done. And we requested data from SCE. And I do want to take a moment to address some of the challenges that we experienced when trying to collect this data from SCE. Our task was to collect detailed information on transformer locations, capacities, and loads, but this was hindered by SCE due to system confidentiality rules. So I think it's important to just note here that SCE was not clear with what they could and could not provide with us for many months. There was quite a bit of back and forth with various departments at SCE. They would send us to the next department to get this data. And it came to a head in about June of 2019 that they let us know that they would not be providing the data requested. The transformer information that we were requesting from SCE was important because the transformers serving the sites we visited also had unconfirmed loads attached to them from residential areas around the sites. And so without this information, we were unable to confirm transformer capacity issues community-wide. And it was decided through coordination with VMS that we would continue moving forward without this information in light of the fact that SCE did indicate that they would analyze sites identified for additional load to confirm the associated transformers could take on any additional load, for example, such as electric vehicles. And so Appendix C of the report outlines the timeline, correspondence, and challenges experienced while trying to collect this transformer data from SCE. And the process to work with SCE to obtain the data did add an unforeseen amount of time and resources to the project. They did ultimately state, though, that any SCE equipment upgrade costs due to additional electrical load would be borne by SCE. So next we had site visits. Due to the size of the community and similarities across infrastructure, a representative sample of the community and sites was selected for evaluation. So all of the carports and laundry facilities are electrically very similar. And so the focus of the fielded sites was to get a sample of sites that would be representative of geographic areas that may have been constructed during different times. And the outliers were the laundry rooms with solar installations. And so we inspected 6 common laundry areas, 10 residential carport cul-de-sacs, and solar panel electrical panels for several laundry rooms. And the exact dates of the site visit are listed in the report. So after inspecting the electrical equipment, TRC rated the condition of that equipment based on asset condition evaluation criteria. And I apologize that the font is very small on the screen, but these criteria were used to rate the electrical equipment at each of the locations that were fielded or visited by tech and TRC staff. So when we say something is in excellent versus poor condition in the report, we had a methodology that went hand in hand to rate those assets. And so the 4 criteria we looked at were asset age, so the useful life of the equipment based on age. We looked at the asset condition, so if there were any visible issues observed in the field, like rusted or corroded equipment, broken equipment, any illegal labeling, etc. We looked at asset performance, if there were any known reliability issues with the equipment, like frequent breaker trips or low voltage, and the level of maintenance. So how often does the equipment get inspected and maintained? And Appendix B in the report shows a summary of how the inspected assets were rated, and they are elaborated on in the report. So before going into some of the findings, I do just want to note that VMS staff is doing a really great job of maintaining electrical infrastructure that is decades old. And this is evidenced by the rare failure of the components and the rare electrical downtime. So here on the right is a screenshot of part of the appendix table showing the inspected gear and the asset rating conditions. The majority of the electrical equipment is original to the facility and has not been upgraded, and this is with the exclusion of some of the sites that have added solar. And so In summary, the majority of the laundry room equipment is original to the facilities. The condition of assets ranged from poor to excellent. Transformers are in adequate to excellent condition. Electrical equipment replaced during solar installations is generally in excellent condition. And then again, a full summary is in Appendix B. So in general, the laundry room, 125 amp and 150 amp main panels and circuit breakers serving laundry rooms and carports are in poor condition. The circuits are undersized for the current load, except for those that have been replaced, and again, generally those sites that have solar. The circuit feeding the carports have experienced overloads due to multiple EVs charging at the same time, and other load plugged in at the carport outlets. We do have a note that increasing the EV charging load will result in circuit overloads and outages if the infrastructure is not upgraded. And we understand the community has a system in place to charge and take turns with different neighbors, but additional load at the same time will cause an issue.
Can I
Yes.
Can I ask a question, please? With regard to these laundry facilities, have we determined which transformers are serving those laundry facilities and the conductors from those transformers to those laundry facilities if they have excess capacity? So that if we wanted to increase the capacity in those laundry facilities, we actually have the capacity available to us at this particular point in time? And is that information in your report?
Brandon, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So the that should be borne by SCE, because that should be SCE facilities up until the meter point, essentially. So they would not give us that kind of information. So in the report, no, the wires leading up to these laundry facilities are we don't have that information.
Okay, but the transformers have excess capacity in them currently, or are these the old transformers or the new ones? Because the new ones they're installing have excess capacity in them because they're installing all of these new transformers. There's no sense in going with the same capacity transformers that they had back in 1960, okay? They're putting in all new transformers. When they put them in, they have excess capacity based on what we currently use. Are those transformers today, the ones that serve the laundry facilities, do they have excess capacity? And then we can discuss with SCE as to whether or not, because they need to increase the conductors, because we got told that if we have need for additional capacity in certain areas, they will provide those conductors. We just need to know if the transformers are there today.
Yeah, and that's where the information they wouldn't provide to us from the previous. They wouldn't provide any of that information. They just said that they would take a look at the load, and if they determined they needed additional upgrades, that they would bear the cost of that.
Chris, were you involved in that discussion also?
Yes, sir.
Because this is an important point, because we're possibly thinking of using laundry facilities for EV charging, and if she just said that there's not excess capacity in the laundry facilities, then we've got a bit of a problem, and we just need to go to SCE based on my discussion with you and Ernesto, and they say that they will provide for that needed additional capacity so that we could serve those particular needs.
Yes.
Right.
So I was involved with the discussions with SCE, and I did go back and forth with them for somewhere between 8 to 12 months. They will not give you any information on the transformers. They cited everything from Homeland Security, Department of Defense, confidentiality rules. But the good news is, if we came to SCE and said, I want to put EV chargers right here, and we sent them the information, they would do the analysis on it. They still won't tell us anything, but if they need to make upgrades, they'll do it. We don't have to pay for it, but we can't say, give us all your information. But if we gave them specific stuff, they would be okay with it. We asked for it in writing,
Right.
and they left. So we're going to see, because they've gone back and forth quite a few times with different departments. But for the most part, there is a general understanding that we're not going to have to pay for the transformers, with the one exception of solar. So I think if you came up with a few sites, we could package together, we'll get a electrical engineering, send it over to them, and then they'll let us know, hopefully quicker than they previously responded. But
Yeah, because in the Energy Task Force, okay, research group, whatever you want to call them nowadays, okay, we have discussed this point, and we feel that the only way to get EV charging in this community at this particular point in time without costing us a ton of money is to put them in the laundry areas and in third in various strategic locations. But we just need to know if we have the capacity in those areas, and if, based on what you're saying, because this is important for part two, okay? Based on this, okay, if SCE is willing to provide that additional capacity if we need it, okay, then we can have a contractor or what have you start putting those charging stations in those locations based on reviews and permits and all that other stuff, okay? I'm just saying it happens overnight. But this is a very important point, so if, based on this report, what we're saying is that SCE will provide the additional capacity we need if we said we needed to put additional charging or something in that location, and they don't have a transformer and conductors to do that. Is that correct?
that is correct.
And it's verbal, I understand,
It's
okay?
verbal.
Nothing's put in writing, okay? But we have to trust somebody, okay? And then we do what Reagan said, trust but verify, okay? So, all right, I just wanted to make sure, because that's a very important point of this particular thing here that you're doing for Phase 2. I'm sorry if I interrupted you, but this needed to get addressed. Okay,
Yeah, no
thank you.
worries.
Yes,
Another question?
yeah, who has another question?
Oh, just for clarification, it's been my experience, Edison has always done that. You give them your loads, they will tell you if the transformer is adequate, and if not, they will upgrade, and they will give you a cost for that upgrade. Everything's not free. If the conduit is fine, they will provide the primary cables. You're responsible for secondary, and that's always been their policy.
Yeah, okay, well, the thing right now is, once we come up with strategic locations for these EV chargers and ask them to provide the excess capacity, we'll discuss whether or not we pay for it or they pay for it. That's after the fact, okay? We'll just see where we can go in the phase one, if you will, or step one, shall we say. Thank you.
No worries, thank you. So after completing the site visits and reviewing the data collected, we developed the reports, which have the findings and recommendations. And so based on the findings, we developed some short-term recommendations. It's recommended to prioritize repairs to carport circuits that are fed from the laundry room panels. And this is a priority because breakers are not meant to be on and off devices, and they have a limited lifespan. A new 20 amp circuit needs to be added per carport to address overloads due to excessive EV charging. The new 20 amp circuits are a short-term solution. However, if any significant loads are added, such as level 2 EV chargers or other generation storage or consumption, the panels will need to be upgraded. And in task 2, which we'll dive into later in the presentation, we'll hone in on how circuits and panels will need to be upgraded to accommodate such additional loads. Before adding electrical loads, load calculation analysis will need to be performed to confirm equipment capacity for additional load, which would be a Part 2 scope. In the long term, the upgrades are the recommendations are generally to maintain regular inspection cycles. And our understanding is that VMS staff do have regular inspections and that they're refining their preventative maintenance plan. And then the estimated budget costs listed on the right-hand side are estimates that would need to be firmed up and confirmed with design and a request for bids. So this slide summarizes the estimated upgrade costs for the recommended short-term upgrades. VMS provided details about the number of laundry rooms and carports across United, which was used to estimate the upgrades across the mutual, since we couldn't visit all of the laundry rooms and all of the carports. Based on the findings, the estimated upgrades costs range from $1.86 million to $2,050,000. And then just a note on some of the assumptions, given that we couldn't inspect 163 laundry rooms and 805 carports, I believe, we assumed that similar facilities across the community would require the same short-term upgrades. And the recommended upgrades do not assume additional load is added to the current infrastructure. And the recommendations would be subject to change based on strategies for EV charging, which again would be under the Scope 2 task. So the results from this assessment would be used to develop a community-wide strategy for electrical infrastructure upgrades with a focus on EV charging installations. And, we can pause here if you'd like for additional questions on Task 1, or I'm happy to go into a review of what Task 2 would be. Yes.
Your estimate, is it a rough order of magnitude, or what's the plus minus?
The range? Yes, so the range is, like we said, an order of magnitude. We assumed that based on the sites we fielded, we assumed similar upgrades would be required across the laundry rooms and carports at the community.
So it's plus minus what?
There's a range based on a 10% contingency
So it's pretty
added.
it's pretty thorough then. Okay. And I'm sorry, I have a couple of questions.
No worries.
Hold on one second with regard to that. You're not telling me right now a rough order of magnitude estimate is what you gave us, and it's plus or minus 10%, right? Because rough order of
No,
magnitude is plus or minus 30 to 50%.
What's
okay?
shown is based on a 10% contingency added to the total cost.
So that's a plus or minus 10% estimate, which is not a rough order of magnitude estimate. I'm just asking.
So
okay?
the cost for I'll clarify that a little bit. The cost for the new laundry room panel, we have it at 4K. That's a kind of a rough order of magnitude, and the cost for a new carport circuit, just due to different like distances and whatnot, is also kind of a rough order. So we put in the range because we think that it'll fall in between. So it's a two rough order magnitude estimates, and then kind of combined, and then added 10% essentially. So it would be your 50 to 30%.
Plus or minus 50.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And what's the scope of work of going to the carport? Are you doing complete new infrastructure, new conduit, new wire? And I think more than 120 amp circuit for future, I would put at least a 100 amp panel to that carport.
Brandon, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So the short-term solution is just based off of the assessment we've done. So we were hearing, that frequent circuit breaker trips because of excess EV charging, and essentially one level 1 charger really takes up a whole circuit. So if there's any additional load on that circuit, it's going to trip. So this was just an analysis of, if you wanted to keep the electrical infrastructure kind of how it is now and serve your current load, this is what you would need to do. But the plan would be identified in Task 2 on how to systematically do that without, going out and saying, all right, well, we're going to spend $2 million, because that's a tough pill to swallow. So that's kind of what we're focusing on in Task 2, is to figure out, okay, do we want to just add one new circuit to all these laundry rooms, or are we wanting to upgrade the panel and adding maybe 2, and then identifying, okay, this will be where we're going to charge, instead of having charging facilities all throughout the community.
Right, there's probably room for 2 more circuits. Did you have as-built to work with?
No, so these cost estimates are based off past projects that we've worked on.
Okay.
So obviously each individual location is going to have a different cost just due to like distances and when you go to each one. It's just for the sample size that we did, this is just kind of, we're basically allocating the same cost across all the locations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Elsa?
Hi.
Hi.
On this same, the page with the estimates on it, I really hate embarrassing myself in public. However, I'm not getting the math, and so I wondered if you could explain 163 laundry rooms. The way I read it, the 163 times 4K per panel should come out to one number, and you got it like a totally different number, like 3 times as much. So what am I missing here? And the same thing with the carports, I'm coming in at half that estimate. I know about the 10% business, but, if you, I just multiplied, because I know how to add and subtract, okay, so I just multiplied. And I just wondered what the explanation on that estimate was, just because it's so grotesquely different. Thanks.
Brandon, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm checking my math really fast to make sure I didn't mess this up.
At least you got a calculator.
Okay, I got the numbers for you if you want. I got it too. I gave them 1.2 million for
Yes.
the first.
No, for the second.
So actually, the numbers that I'm the math is, so that cost on the far right is the total cost of both.
Yeah.
So we're saying for each laundry room, it's going to cost $4,000 for the panel, and then each additional circuit is $1,500 for the carports as well. So those totaled up equal to $1,860, and then we have the 10% contingency in there.
10%.
Oh, so that's, okay, you see what I thought? I thought the 1,860,000 was for the laundry rooms and the bottom one was for the carports. So,
No,
like
no,
I
that's the
said, I
total
hate to
cost.
embarrass myself in public, but I'd rather ask than not know. Thank you.
No, that's good.
Yeah, they're a rough order.
Double check on the
maybe, too.
math there.
Cash?
Yeah. I have a few questions on page number 4, chart number 4. You're talking about electric meter all the way down, so that's the way the laundry facility is. But I'm not so sure that every carport has this similar setup, is it? Every carport does not. So how are you doing the checking, putting this diagram as the master diagram? The carport together each individual carport does not have an electric meter.
Of the laundry room, they go off the laundry room.
They all go out to the laundry room? All the carports?
I think so.
I don't know.
The carports are fed from the laundry rooms.
They do? Okay. All right. On chart number 8, you said you have problems getting data from SCE. Is that because you're asking on their end or from our end? Electric meter down is our end, isn't it?
Yes, we had issues with the transformer data.
Okay.
So data behind
The
Laguna Woods
transformer.
meters.
Okay. All right, I have one more question, if I mistake not. Okay, on chart 14, you're talking about a long-term solution of 50K per laundry room. I was wondering if there's a breakdown, how much of that will be ours, United, and how much, question more to Chris. Is this all 50K for us per laundry room?
That's $50.
Um,
It will?
That's actually actually $50.
And it's
Just
$50,
$50.
$50 per, that's our cost.
to do a,
Okay, okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions on this task one? Yes?
I wondered on the 805 carports, did you look only at the freestanding carports? Because we have a number of carports that are in the bottom of a building, and they are different sizes.
Brandon,
Right, right. So like we said kind of earlier, we tried to find like a diverse selection just because we had a limited sample size that we could work with to fit within the budget, and so we really just spread it out. So for each individual one, it'll be different, but that'll be kind of identified in task 2 on where we'll identify kind of the key areas where we think where we should be adding circuits for EV charging, because some of them might not need it, and that will be worked with United, and we'll work together to what type of chargers we want to install, because there's 3 different types of chargers, and they all have different varying costs and the exact locations. As you know, a lot of facilities have like a central charging area if that's more kind of the way United wants to go, or if we want to just identify carports and say, okay, this is where the charging facilities, that'll be kind of determined in task 2. But for right now in task 1, we looked at a couple of carports and then just kind of extrapolated the cost to all of them just to get a rough order magnitude.
Because the under-building carports are not connected to laundry rooms at all. And sometimes not close.
are you able to hear that, Brandon?
I think I under-building carports, I heard something.
Yeah,
Are they included in this 805 or not?
I would have to get back with the field engineer that went and did the assessment on those. I do not have that off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
we can follow up and we'll send a response to Chris to send out.
I would specifically suggest that of the 805 carports, probably the carports that are under the buildings are not obvious to the casual observer if you look at an aerial map, okay, of this, because it's a 2-story building. My carport sits inside of a 2-story building, okay, underneath. So I do not have a freestanding carport my car sits in under. So as a result of that, if you look at an aerial map, all you're seeing is a 2-story building. You're not seeing the carport that's sitting underneath it. That's my personal opinion. And they're not probably connected to a laundry room because of the fact that the power comes directly from that building, okay, and goes into a circuit box that came off of that building. So just food for thought.
Do you recall, Chris, if those were included? Okay. Yeah, we'll verify and have Chris send an update.
I just question your sampling.
From what I understand, this is short-range planning, and I also heard that there is capacity for additional circuit. It seems to me that perhaps you should look at the incremental cost that would add on to put in this extra circuit that would give us extended life. I don't believe it would be double if you're doing some electrical work to put in that extra circuit.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on task 1? If not, we'll go on to task 2.
All right. So we just reviewed the task 1 activities. We collected data to assess the current state of electrical infrastructure and developed a report to provide recommendations for upgrades to manage the existing infrastructure. So now that we've reviewed the infrastructure for the current state, we would have baseline information to analyze the upgrades necessary to add additional load across the next 5 to 10 years. After completing analysis on load requirements, we would develop a strategy and financial analysis for infrastructure upgrades and then develop a report. So in the next couple of slides, I'll dive a bit deeper into the Task 2 scope and a high-level outline of the report elements. So just want to take a moment and pause and provide the context of the approach that I've just described by taking a look at what is described in Scope 2. And so up here, we understand that United is looking for an upgrade strategy needed to serve the current 5 and 10-year load requirements and the infrastructure upgrades necessary to meet those demands. So our task would be to develop an EV charging station plan as part of this strategy to serve as a vision for the community with quantitative goals and a practical guide to achieve those goals. So this is just a high-level proposed outline of the deliverable relevant to this task, and we'll go through some of the details in the next slides. But very high level, we'd be looking at the current reviewing the current infrastructure, going over findings and analysis, and then recommendations and next steps. So on the left is the main first section of the report, and then on the right are the main scope of work elements that were previously agreed upon that would be addressed in this section. So we would be looking at an overview of EV charging infrastructure, and that would be for both golf carts as well as EV vehicles. And then an overview of the community EV adoption. The next section is a deep dive into the findings and analysis. So we will illustrate EV adoption forecasts with a high and low adoption scenario and look at the impact from EVs and EV chargers on community energy consumption over 5 and 10 years. Then we will discuss infrastructure implications and the available load per site. And then again, an important note, SCE had promised us a review of proposed EV locations to confirm transformer capacity for additional load, and that was said by them in June of 2019. So SCE has not initiated the analysis of the proposed meter transformers yet because of staff changes, also waiting to hear the decision from the mutual on how to proceed. But as Chris mentioned, we were having various conversations with them throughout several months, and that would continue with Scope 2. At this point, without their cooperation, we could still proceed with Task 2 in parallel and assume that there will be transformer capacity at the identified EV charger sites, since SCE did indicate that they would be responsible for transformer upgrades if the load called for it. And again, this is, as Chris mentioned, except for where solar is being added. So the figure on the bottom right was just an initial brush at EV forecasting based on the information that we did have. So the last section of the report would be recommendations and next steps. So we'd be looking at recommendations for electrical infrastructure upgrades, recommendations for EV charging infrastructure, provides financial impacts of those upgrades, and then as well as a summary of the available grants, rebates, and incentives for EV charging installation upgrades. And then provide next steps and recommended implementation strategy for the next 5 and 10 years based on the community's EV needs. And this is very, very high level, but hopefully gives you an idea as to the Task 2, which is of course subject to change based on the committee's decision and ongoing discussions.
With regard to 3.1, I thought Task 2 was basically getting involved in the EV chargers, but in Task 1, you made some recommendations about electrical infrastructure upgrades because of the fact that there were breakers that are opening all the time and what have you, okay? So what additional recommendations would be made with regard to electrical infrastructure upgrades other than what you've made already? And I guess that task 2 was supposed to be just with regard to EV charging, my understanding.
Yes, so task 1 was only to look at the existing infrastructure and the current load. So in task 2, we would be recommending electrical upgrades required when adding additional load. So task 1 was looking at the current load. Task 2 would be looking at assuming additional load is added for EV charging.
Okay. Yes, Walter?
2 quick questions. One, was it in the scope of work to include future loads on the buildings themselves? Because I've done a couple of load studies so far, and they're running pretty high, like 80% of existing load. And 2, are you aware there's no, to my knowledge, no as-builts? Would you be creating some if you did the work?
We would not be creating as-built. To your first question, and Brandon, feel free to step in. So our focus would really be on where EV charging infrastructure would be installed. So if it wasn't connected to a building load, we wouldn't be, that's not in the
Okay, so
scope.
your scope was just for EV? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yes?
I got
Right.
2 questions. First one is.
I think your microphone's not on.
I got 2 questions. First one is SCE. You claim to be a company to help communities change to a new future. Have you run into that problem before?
With data issues?
Yeah.
We have. And, you know, there's multiple sources of data from them. We do have a good working relationship from our past work with many different public agencies. But the transformer issues, I don't believe we've run into before.
Okay, my second question is, you talk about EV adoptions, and that's a complicated, it looks to me you're going to predict or forecast the EV adoption rate, and that's a difficult problem because it's evolving technology and other factors out there. What's your approach to do that?
Brandon, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so that EV adoption rates, there's a couple different agencies that have actually done a bunch of forecasts on that, as well as the especially like companies like ChargePoint who install EV infrastructure like on businesses. On how adoption rates will be, but theirs is also a forecast as well, and that's basically why we're doing kind of a low and high estimate, just because if it takes off rampant, then our solution will still be scalable to that amount.
I won't ask any further questions, but I'll just say that that answer was not really acceptable. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Cash?
Our carports right now, I don't believe can handle more than one electric charging and a golf cart at the same time. Have we done do you have any numbers as to what we should anticipate if we get more electric cars in the next 3 or 4 years? Because that's where the world is moving to.
So that would be covered in scope 2, looking at what would be needed for adding additional EV charging. Brandon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so that will be identified in task 2 on where the chargers are going to be at. But yeah, currently with the 20 amp breakers that serve the carports, you're right. It's one EV and maybe a golf cart. Sometimes that could overload it as well. So that would be identified in task 2 based on the chargers that are going to be installed and looking at the loads and the circuits.
Based on what I know, many of these cars draw 12 to 15 amps on their own for each charge. So that means that each carport for each car would need either a 15 or a 20 amp circuit just for that particular thing. Otherwise, the breaker would pop. Some of the other ones, some of the other cars, you can regulate the charging on your car with a computer program that's in the car, but many of them are drawing anywhere between 12 and 15 amps. That's my understanding. So right now, it seems to me that we would have to have a 20 amp circuit for each particular car. I mean, that's the only way to go, I believe, and that's what I think we need to do. So anybody have any other questions on task 2? If not, then we have to discuss a couple of things with regard to this particular contract. So I think maybe it might be best if we excuse you, and then we go on to it. And I'm going to ask Chris and Velny to address what happened with Third and what's happening with this contract with Third. So thank you for your time. Appreciate
you.
that.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning. No, he's been disconnected, I believe.
Okay, just let me open this discussion up just for a minute, okay? I don't have all the answers. I definitely do not have all the answers, okay? With regard to task 2, as I said before, Third was made, this presentation was made at Third's last MNC meeting. And then I guess Ernesto and Chris and what have you, whatever, made their own presentations. And it came to the conclusion that with the amount of money we have left in this particular budget for this, okay, the fact is that we're not, let me just backtrack. The fact is that right now, in order to basically put a 20 amp circuit at each car location in a carport, okay, the monies that we're talking about, this is a plus or minus 50% estimate, okay? This is in the $4 to $5 million range, okay, for any of these things, plus, okay? So, and there's a lot of people in the community that are still having heartburn over the fact that we are using EV charging. Oh, this is not the thing of the future. However, the baby boomer generation, which I'm a member of, okay, is also thinking in terms of the fact that this will be the future in California. So spending the money is required. So at the Energy Task Force, one of the things that got mentioned was that we have information on file to say where in the Laguna Woods Village United area, whereby we have the higher concentrations of electric vehicles, and on a priority basis, we would strategically start locating in those laundry facilities for those cul-de-sacs and these EV charging stations, and make sure we have the capacity in the laundry areas. That would have to be phase 1. And then phase 2, over maybe 10 or 15 years or what have you, we could possibly think about putting actual some sort of additional circuits within the carports, okay? But for phase 1, since EV vehicles are coming in a lot faster than what we anticipated, and a lot of people are opening their breakers every time they plug into cars at the same time, because it's only a 20 amp circuit and they're drawing anywhere between 12 and 15 amps. You can't have 30 amps drawn against a 20 amp circuit. So as a result of that, that's the thought process that was going in. So I guess with that, Third had made a determination that they would not go into phase 2 of this, and they would save that $20,000 and use it for someplace else. And I'd like to hear from our M&C people to see where that went, why that came about, and what the thought process was. And unless you have another question regarding it, I'll have Chris and Velny take the floor.
Okay. So after we reviewed information from both United and Third Mutual, overwhelmingly looks like it's not going to be able to do carport. The amount of money is outrageous. It's in the tens of millions of dollars to realistically do it. You have hundreds of carports. And we don't know what the adoption rate is. Mr. Gilmore did speak about our forecast of 10%. I promise you, if oil spikes to $200 a barrel, there's going to be more EV, so we don't know at this point. And starting to throw millions of dollars into the project is not the best idea for your long-term planning. What we started out doing with GRF, if you noticed outside, we have a strategic location where we have sets of EV chargers. We have 2 dual bollards for level 2, and then we have 3 level 3 chargers. This is the kind of plan that I was thinking that for Third Mutual will work better. Finding nice locations where there's plenty of parking, where we can tap into SCE's infrastructure, and then we can set up a plan. Every year we'll do 1 or 2 at nice, perfect locations. So eventually after 5, 6, 7 years, no matter where you are in the community, you're going to be within walking distance of the EV charger station like that. Ideally, we would just put these at 7 clubhouses. JRF has their own budget, and they're kind of not on board with that right now. But that's kind of what we were focusing on, just finding nice locations. I was going to plan on presenting a few of them to the Third Mutual Board and see what their thoughts were. Once we had their approval and they understood that, the next step would be to reach out to an electrical engineer, draw up all the schematics, and then send it to Edison to see what their thought is. Will they still honor the no transformer fees? We'll see what they say. But it just overwhelmingly seems like the carports and the garages are just out of question until something changes in terms of technology.
I guess based on the meeting that you had with Third, okay, I guess what MNC is recommending is that we not continue with this contract for Phase 2 because it's $20,000 we don't really need to spend. Is that my understanding?
That was the opinion of Director Muniz, and I would have to agree with him.
Okay.
It just seems better to do, as you stated before, strategic locations throughout the community and kind of, unfortunately, at this time, abandon the carport and garage, individual charging. It's too expensive.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add to that, Vili? Okay. Questions? Let's start over there. Janie?
How many EV vehicles do we have here in United?
You have approximately 111 electric
111?
vehicles, representing about 0.6% of your...
So is there a certain area that they are more concentrated than other areas?
Absolutely. There are concentrated areas. I had looked at the project. You ever do a project and halfway through kind of say, well, this wasn't the best. I was looking at putting locations where presently we have a lot of EV cars. However, as I looked at it as more of a 5, 10, 15-year plan, it may be better not to look at the present data. If you're going to spend the money to build these, you're going to have to understand that, some are going to spend $1 million, $2 million, because we're expecting a 10% or 15 or 20% EV cars within the next 10 years. So the present data of where our EV cars isn't as relevant as I once thought it was. As I look at it again, it's going to be strategically by distance. Everyone will be within a quarter mile or a half mile, just because in 10 years, our assumption would be that it will be even distribution of EV cars throughout the community. Like, for example, if you had a square village, and currently you had 15 EV cars in the upper right-hand corner, that wouldn't be the best place to put a station. because after 10 years, when it's more spread out, it just wouldn't help out 99% of the community. So it's going to be geographically.
Okay.
Unless you guys want anything different.
I'm
You're in
getting their
charge.
feedback. Okay, Walter? I'll get you next.
The one issue that may come up is that some of these people are very elderly and can't walk the quarter mile. And my second, maybe a proposal is we do our monthly announcements of what's going on in the village, maybe inform people what's required before they buy the EV, that they're gonna need a charging station they're gonna have to walk to. And the kind of, last month we discussed the connection for, like the Tesla needs a different connection. Maybe a quick blurb to let people know that we don't have the capacity at this time.
And I'm not here to rebut anything that you said, okay? But I would specifically charge the fact that we do have a bus system in this community, and the bus system, it's not convenient, but the thing right now is we're not going to be putting these EV chargers in the carports, okay? So we're going to locate them in strategic locations. What those locations are, we don't know yet, because as I say, we'll try to go to those areas where we have more concentration at first, and then come up with some other, logic as to how we would do that, okay? And I don't have that logic. I don't have all the answers here. I don't have any answers. So, okay. So, yes, Brian.
Yeah, I have several comments. One is, I think when I was referring to the adoption rate, I was more interested in their methodology to determine their expertise level, okay? And not making any statement, because I think we really should let the data lead us to the decisions. Sure. Okay? And from that, I can't see where they have really any significant expertise. They got hung up on the data part, and then they don't bring any new expertise. So I'm leaning we don't continue with it. But going back to the issue, what do we do about EVs? There's lots of money being poured into battery technology, huge amounts of money, and there's going to be some breakthroughs. We can't predict when that will happen, and we can't predict the price of oil, and we can't predict adoption rates. But what we can do is create a roadmap, and that will identify the decision points that we have to make as we go forward, and be ready for how it plays out. So maybe that's something that should be considered at VETF or something like that.
That will be something we will be discussing at the VETF, okay?
So that's my only comment. I don't think we should move forward with the contract.
Thank you. Yes.
Let's look at electricity as gasoline, okay? We don't provide a gas pump for every car we have. So what we need to do is we need to get these EV owners, of course, I'm all for electric vehicles, not that I'm not, should think of their own problem of getting into electric vehicle when we are not ready. And we are talking about modifications at costs of like 4.5K to install these new circuits per carport, if I'm mistaken, not per laundry room, so per carport. Right now, how do the carts that we have, golf carts, we charge them a blanket rate, right?
Yes.
We charge a blanket rate. But for EVs, we cannot do that because different EVs are different rates, different charge.
Right now.
Yeah. So,
But
we should let the burden of getting their gasoline or electric on them, not on us.
Okay, well, that's a nice idea. Unfortunately, right now, we're looking for people to move into this community, okay? And if they don't have a
That's
source
fine.
of EV charging, okay, then they're
So-
going to say, sorry, I'm going to go to Seal Beach or someplace else, so, I mean,
Well,
that's the thought.
what if we put, say, every laundry, one car charger? There are 15 cars that are electric cars. That's not going to help. So you're going to need more than one station. It's so early to even think about going electric right now. Infrastructure for electric. So we shouldn't be spending money to do the study right now, or maybe finish the study and stop right there.
Sue?
As an owner of an electric car, I would say that we do need to provide it, just like you provide gas stations in the near area. You do right now charge a fee for using the carport to charge your car. So we do pay a fee. It requires on a charger 4 hours. It's not the 10 minutes to fill your gas tank on the fast chargers, and 12 hours in the carport to fill up the electric charge. The price and the situation is people are going to buy electric cars. Now, you can do what they're saying is put them at destination charging, such as putting them at the clubhouses, which is a destination charger. But that they have to spend 4 hours at that destination to get a full charge, and they're not going to be happy about that. The charge point chargers allow you to look on your phone and set a time that you're going to take that charger, and tells you when your car is charged, and you can go move your car off. So you can make an appointment to the charge point charger, get your car charged, and come back and take your car away. So people will be able to go to the laundry room, they put their laundry in, and then they set the timer, they get it on their phone, and they go pick up their car and move it out. So you can make appointments. And that would work with the laundry rooms.
Okay. The reason I'm saying is the battery technology is changing so fast that within the year, we will have electric cars that can be charged within 10 minutes right at the pump, electric pump, okay? That
You're
technology is
dreaming a
here.
little bit.
So we are trying to accommodate a few handful of people who already fell into the trap and bought the electric cars with a battery.
Let me just say this, okay? The places that we're looking to put that, we're not looking to spend $5 or $10 million. We're looking to spend it on an ongoing basis, like Chris said. A number of these, whatever that's 10 or whatever, EV chargers per year at strategic locations. And with that, you would be able to provide for locations that they could charge their vehicle, because in California, we are been told by the various political figures that they're going to start going for EVs, cars in this particular
True,
state.
I agree. But issues for this should be addressed by GRF property. Put them on GRF property.
They are doing that.
Provide the bus service from there to the manors,
They,
instead of trying to
they're looking at
change or-
strategic locations at the clubhouses also. But we were also looking at, well, let's put it this way, okay? Right now, we're getting into debate on EV chargers. At this particular point in time, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we stop any more money being used for this TEC and tell them, thank you very much, but we've basically got enough information and we don't have to go any further. And that's the motion I'm looking from the floor right now.
Is that going to save money?
It'd save us $20,000.
I make that motion.
Okay. Anybody object to that? It's passed. We're not going to do this anymore. Now, with regard to this EV charging, I think this debate needs to go over to another time period, okay? We're not going to get anywhere right now, but at this particular point in time, me as the chairman of this committee and part of the VETF or what have you, we're looking at locating strategic places within the community, and in United, they happen to be at the laundry areas to locate these chargers in the short term. Carport charging is probably not going to happen for at least another 10 years. But at this particular point in time, at least it will be at the laundry facilities, okay? And we will have to develop a plan as to where we should locate them, how many we should put in, and whether or not SCE has enough capacity to support that location. So, and then I'll take a couple more questions, and then we're going to go on to the next item, because we're not going to get any place with this. Yes, Janie?
What is the cost for a charging station?
The cost of a charging station will vary. For example, the ones outside, we received a $180,000 rebate. So the 3 superchargers, they're expensive without a rebate. They are very expensive, and you do have a challenge. As a gated community, it's tough to find.
Quoted me 7,000 for laundry room.
I was referring to the level 3.
Yeah. And the thing right now is, okay, since we're in a gated community, we can't get the rebate. The only reason why we got the rebate is because this is an open area over here. Walter?
I just want to reinforce that maybe we should put something to the public to be proactive when they're considering buying an EV, what's available and what's going to be available. Maybe that might help them when they won't be so upset when you tell them they don't have.
Yeah, because they see a plug in their carport, and the first thing they say, oh, I can plug in, because
Right.
we also charge them for
So-
owning that thing, because we can plug into any plug in the carport, but unfortunately, 2 people can't plug in at the same time, otherwise the circuit pops.
Right, a little information in the newsletter would go a long way to help, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Elsie?
And whoever's involved in all this, let's make sure and coordinate with Marcom, because part of Marcom's marketing of the woods is how green we are and how we promote electrical, the point is we're really pushing that from that end. And so whatever we decide, we have to have them pull back just a tad, if we're gonna, because you're right, Walt, but on the other hand, it's out of one mouth, we're saying, yeah, we're green and bring your electrical vehicles and we're gonna be all solar in a few years, and then say, oh yeah, by the way, so just a thought.
And to end this, go ahead, Cash.
Now, the electric car owners who live in their own homes spend for their own use, their own station. Why should we take the burden and do it on something that the technology is moving so fast? Our investment in anything towards that end is going to be wasted in another 2 or 3 years. It won't be needed, other than for these old clunkers.
Well, thank you, appreciate that, okay, and we'll get onto this discussion. In that particular vein, I know that we haven't gotten to that point of the agenda, but we probably should add something in a future agenda item to discuss the strategic locations of these electric charging and what we want to do about electric charging in the village. Okay? With that, we will go on to neighboring update. And I believe that everybody, I made some copies, and I think everybody got a copy of this. United Handyman Phase 1. This is supposed to be an oral discussion, and I'll kick it off. I forgot to thank Chris. Would you thank Chris for his input?
I put some copies of this.
Okay.
Basically, I'm getting pretty good vibes from their CEO saying that the number of calls he's been getting is getting higher and higher every day, and not just from us, but also from the third. So people are very much into it. He still has 150 1099 people, the college students. So he says, I still have plenty of capacity to service 4 times the load. So slowly and slowly this is getting in place, but we need to advertise, be able to put these flyers in JRF buildings or other common locations where people come and pick up flyers and they get aware of this thing. Just hand carrying it is quite a tough job, and I don't have that many volunteers to do it with. So if we can get that permission from JRF, that will really, really help.
As indicated in this little write-up here, which cover sheets the actual neighboring flyer, the neighboring flyer has some spelling errors in it, the one that I have, and there's some additional items that were going to be put on here. However, as everybody knows who was on the board back in the day, okay, the handyman program came and went because it was found out to be too expensive, because at $200, we weren't able to keep up. So we came up with a alternate plan, and thank Cash for starting this whole process. Phase one would be this neighboring thing, which is basically light handyman services, changing light bulbs, what have you, okay? And there's a list of items here on the second page that they would do. And then phase two would be the actual technical work, and the technical work would be done by VMS. And this technical work was done by VMS during the old handyman program. However, it was $200 for the year, and they can get anything they don't want it done, okay? And there was not enough time in the day or enough people to keep up with the demand. And because for $200, it was cheap. I mean, what the heck, you know? Hey, I want to get my whole house updated, okay? And that'll be $200, please. So, in any case, what we anticipate doing, and that'll be part of item 15, which we will go into in a minute, is to go into the phase two portion of this, which has not been approved yet, and we'd like to try to get it on the approval list for our next board meeting. So this particular M&C committee meeting is very important that we go through it, and I think it's in your brochure, in your packet here, okay, under agenda item number 15, and on page 15. In any case, there's a resolution there, a staff report, excuse me, for that particular phase two, and what that would do is address many of the technical items, plumbing, electrical, and carpentry that would be done by VMS, okay? And for the most part, there's some confusion here with regard to this, okay? Painting, when they say painting, we're not allowed to paint the outside of our buildings, okay? And that's where painting comes in. However, I don't know about anybody else. I don't need a neighboring guy to hire to paint the inside of my house, because I do all the painting myself, okay? But a neighboring guy, if a person is older and they want their room painted from white to chartreuse, okay, they can buy the paint, they can negotiate with neighboring, the guy will come in and he'll paint the room. He can paint the room, okay?
Not the ceiling.
He can paint the ceiling, too. He can't remove the ceiling if there's any popcorn on it, but he can paint it, okay? So the thing right now is anything technical will be done according to this list that you see as agenda item number 5 in your packet. And these pricing was developed by Ernesto and his people and Betty and her people as to what would be charged for these particular services. And if we agree to this at the board meeting, we agree to it today, and then we push it on to the board meeting, then these prices will be going into effect. I don't think there's a 30-day requirement on this, but we'll go on, 28, whatever, okay. Is there a 28-day requirement? Okay, the 28-day requirement on this, but at least it'll go to the board in the March meeting, okay, and then it could be implemented at the April meeting if it gets the final approval. So under the circumstances right now, unless anybody has any questions on this neighboring, which is item number, whatever the heck number is on your item number 14 on our list. Nobody, yes?
I have a couple of thoughts. When you send out a flyer into the community, does it have to be approved? Does it have to have a stamp from Recreation or another department?
Yes.
Yes, it should.
No, well, wait a minute. We don't have any, I mean, I'm not yelling at you, I'm just instruction. We don't have any contract with these people, and I'm not saying you don't need some kind of approval, like, to pass them out, but this is basically an outside, we went to great lengths to build that wall. So why would we put a stamp on it saying we are here?
Because it's being passed out in our community.
It's, the specific, but the thing right now is, okay, this particular issue of how we implement it how we put out the flyers and what have you. We will go through whatever rules we need to follow in order to make sure that happens. There were some questions from Eileen as to whether or not we could do it this way or do it that way. Some people said GRF didn't want to have anything in their clubhouses or what have you, okay? We're trying to get all of that arranged, okay? Right now, the actual program, as it's advertised, okay, is out. We're using it, okay? And as is mentioned here,
Forget it. I thought I had it off. I apologize.
this company, we're not neighboring, okay, but we have reviewed their services and found their services based on past experience to be acceptable, and we're telling the people they should use them if they choose to, as is mentioned here. I have so many caveats in this damn thing, okay? You know, so if they choose to do it, they can go to anybody else. They can get to their nephew or whatever.
I understand that. I've had people question me, why has it not a stamp on it from Recreation as other things? This is an outside facility. Why is it not have an approval stamp
The
on it, on
reason
the
is-
flyer itself?
It's not recreation.
It's not recreation.
I know it's not recreation, but we cannot hand out other commercial people flyers or anything.
Excuse me.
Are not in the boxes either. They're not in the wood, in the clubhouses.
I understand. No, it's just questions that have come to me. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, and the thing right now is we'll just have to work out that detail. Right now, just know that the neighboring program is phase one of our handyman program, and you can use it or not use it as your own pleasure.
I understand that, yeah.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
If we put a stamp or a seal of approval on it, it means we'll be recommending him.
Yeah.
And then we will be liable if there is some problems resulting from service.
So I think this issue is a gray area more than anything else.
It's a gray area,
Yeah, gray
and we're
area.
trying to work it out.
Okay.
It will never be stamped.
Remember, don't
Wait.
ask, don't tell?
Yes, Walter?
You ask, that's why I'm asking.
So you don't know.
Can I be the devil's advocate?
Sure.
3 items on here: replace interior blinds, hang curtain rods, and paper towel holder. Are we getting in trouble with asbestos? Because at the last meeting, poking holes in the wall was, that's why I'm being the devil's advocate.
I have no comment in that particular area because you're allowed up to 10 square feet, is my understanding, okay? So, I mean, poking a hole in the wall, you know, if that's the case and asbestos is really that much of a problem in this community, then we should all be wearing face masks when we get into our homes, okay?
I agree. I was just
I mean,
bringing up what was discussed.
Let's face it, okay? So, I'm not going to go there. You know, I think my friend over here, Ms. Addington, said it rightly. Don't ask, don't tell, okay? It's a towel holder. I don't know.
It's a service that will help our people. That's why we brought it around.
No.
And our
No, I
social
understand,
services have
Walter.
done it.
You are perfectly correct in what you're saying, okay? But under the circumstances, I just will play the three monkeys on this one, okay? And that's it, okay? So, anybody have any other questions on this Phase 1 handyman program? If we don't, then I'll ask our MNC people to go into item number 15, which is Phase 2.
Yes. So as item 15 is part of the Phase 2 to change and revise the list of non-emergency maintenance chargeable services that can be provided to United members, in place of course, the disband of the handyman services that was active in 2018 due to, of course, the cost that was not, it was breaking even for United. The cost for $200 for a service of 3 times a month for 12 months was not a cost-effective program for United Mutual as a whole. And so we were in a deficit. And so it was turned to end the program and create the Phase 1, which is the neighboring program, and then make revisions to the revised non-emergency maintenance chargeable services to provide additional services to the members for other needs that would require carpentry, electrical, plumbing, that would be available to staff as a chargeable base. The cost that you see in the agenda items that are listed is a rough estimate. It is, as things would change as we get to site, of course, it could be less and it could be more depending on what we find on site. But it helps the resident to understand what potential costs they would incur to accept the services.
Comment?
Yes, Josh?
This is more like for people who have altered the manners and, yeah.
Yes,
They do not get presently any service from United. So those people, this will apply. And for those who have no alterations in their units, it's still United's responsibility.
There's a lot of items that United does maintain inside the home. As you can tell in the limitations, a lot of these items that are going to be serviced by staff would require the member to have supplies that the staff would need to install.
Anybody have any other questions, either on pricing or what have you? Yes, Sue?
Replacement alteration baseboards and moldings. For $69, I can get a whole room done. I think you ought to put a linear footage down on that, because it could go, you know,
Those are
say
per
the
hour
whole house
costs.
needs new moldings, and
Yeah.
there should be a little.
And those costs are per hour costs, as I understand from Ernesto.
Well, some of them are, he did say that, okay, but some of them are per hour costs and some of them are not, because in most cases, like install alteration dishwasher, it indicates that's usually a 2-hour job, okay? That's why he's got $195 on there, okay? So a 2 or 3 hour job, actually, okay? So it's not totally understandable, okay?
It's not understandable.
So the thing right now is, okay, so maybe in certain instances, we need to put a per hour thing in there, but that's, you know, something we need to address, okay? But I don't think there's gonna be many people that are gonna have their baseboard changed out, but there may be one or two. I mean, somebody likes to take over the system, but, you know, I can do a lot of molding in the space of an hour, trust me. I can do a whole room in the space of an hour. All you need is one saw and a lot of wood, okay? So, especially our places here. Anybody else?
Same thing
I'm sorry.
applies to painting
Hold
as
on.
well.
Sorry, President.
I say same thing applies to painting as well.
Yeah. Yes.
I would just suggest that we change the title on this. It's misleading to people to say non-emergency maintenance of chargeable services. We need to put alterations in there somewhere. Non-emergency maintenance of alterations or chargeable services for non-emergency maintenance of alterations. Now, if they read down, they're going to see alteration, but just looking, they're going to think, oh, if I have a non-emergency of something in my unit, I'm going to be charged for it.
I don't have a particular problem with that. Okay, does anybody have a problem with adding that? A non-emergency maintenance of alteration chargeable services?
No, I do.
Okay.
I think the word non-emergency should be removed, because suppose somebody has a leaking plumbing that they have altered. It is an emergency. It's not non-emergency. So that word non-emergency signifies that these costs apply only for non-emergency. So that word non-emergency should be gone, and we should say, you know, services offered, alterations, maintenance, or whatever.
Chargeable services for maintenance of alterations.
Great title. Good.
How about just chargeable services?
Period.
Yeah, because
Well, the thing right now is that, well, we can say that, chargeable services, because in every instant down here, okay, it specifically says that's for an alteration, okay? So, I mean, we either say it in the title or we say it at the top, in the body, and it's in the body because I wrote most of this, okay? And specifically, I made sure that it would address the alteration, because I know that anybody that doesn't have an alteration, they call up United and people will come into their house and fix whatever they've got. as long as it's not an alteration. So I think the non-emergency thing should be probably deleted somehow and put a little footnote at the bottom or something, okay? But I think they have a point, okay? Non-emergency says something. Yes, Sue?
Scheduling, how's scheduling going to be done on this? What type of, are you going to have to wait months, days, weeks? Are we going to be overflowed?
There is,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it would be a chance that there would be a time frame to wait, as this would go in queue with all services that are provided to the mutual.
Will it go ahead of any well, it won't go ahead of emergency, but other requests that are, is it the end of the queue or the middle, or just based on timing or what?
It would be based on when it was called in.
So it could, okay.
Yeah, I guess first in, first out.
Yes.
I guess, and that's probably the fair way to do it, okay? Because this person still needs their work done, whatever that happens to be, and,
Depending on the emergency, if it's a leak.
well, this is non-emergency, remember?
We're non-emergency.
If it's an emergency, it's a completely different animal. This is like, hey, listen, I'd like a new sink put in, okay? Can you guys come over and do that? And then they'll look down and they'll say, okay, a new sink, that'll cost you X amount of dollars, okay?
I'm sorry, to make any changes to the titles would of course require this to go back to the MNC, because you would then need a revision to the resolution.
This is M&C.
This is M&C.
So it's
We would have to rewrite the resolution for approval.
We can make a motion.
Why can't we make the motion now, okay? Just like we do with the minutes and what have you, okay? We make the motion to say that we approve this with the following changes, okay? And, okay, the only thing is, we have to come up with what those changes are so that these people don't get slapped on the wrist and say, well, that's not what I said. So what is the change? What are we gonna say? What did you hear us say, Delman?
Remove, add alteration to the header and remove chargeable services. I'm sorry, remove
non-emergency.
emergency from.
So it would be maintenance,
Chargeable services for all.
chargeable services for, what'd you say again?
Alteration.
For alterations. Does anybody have a problem with what was just said? Chargeable services for alterations.
Why can't we just
Why
call it
have
chargeable
maintenance
services?
there?
They took it off.
Because they need to know it's only for alterations.
It says only for alterations all the way through the entire list.
And they stop to read all that.
Well, this is not going to be published in the newspaper, with all due respect, Mrs. Skillman. This is not going to be published in the paper. I don't know, I just think keep it simple, stupid. Another one of mine.
I totally agree. I don't have a problem with chargeable services. If nobody else does, we just put chargeable services, and they read down there and they say, oh, chargeable services, and they say, oh, this is for an alteration. Because every indication when there's an alteration involved, it says so. But, what does the committee want to do? Chargeable services, okay, or you want to put the word alterations in there? Yes, Cheney?
Okay, it's okay with me.
Wouldn't
Okay.
property services person tell them, if you're just calling in for maintenance on chargeable services, that it is a upgrade or not an upgrade? By looking at their overall computer printout that they've got?
Yes, they will know that,
So they
okay,
will
and they'll
know it.
tell them, okay, like when I called in and I asked for a thing, and they said, oh, that particular thing is an alteration, and I said, yes, I know
Yeah.
that, okay?
So why do you need to put anything other than maintenance chargeable services?
Well, that's what we're talking about right now, so
Maintenance, just chargeable.
just chargeable services, period.
Yeah, you don't put the word you mean.
I think your resolution already has that name in there.
That's what we're talking about, we need to change the all.
The heading on
The
this
header.
thing here.
You need to change the heading.
So we'll just, unless somebody has a problem, okay, when we vote on this, okay, we're going to use the word just chargeable services, period, and get rid of non-emergency maintenance. Anybody have a problem with that?
Maybe we should put alteration chargeable services. I don't know what, let's just.
Wait a minute, you're vacillating here. Yes, Sue.
I would like to know which are per hourly rates also. I think you need to put that down.
I got a copy here, you want it?
Which
No, it doesn't say which ones are hourly rates, okay?
so that they understand that these are hourly rates, like per job, per job.
Yeah, and at this particular point in time, this committee doesn't care which one you put down as hourly or not hourly. Just put an asterisk next to that particular item. We don't need to come back to the M&C committee because we're not going to look at the pricing, okay?
Okay. So we can add it to the limitations,
Why is that not the sheet that we got?
to the list of the limitations where there's an asterisk that it would include an hourly rate versus a per job.
We can specifically indicate in an asterisk or something that say it's per unit cost, okay, except in those instances where it's hourly.
Well,
But,
she
yeah.
has a chart with all the number of hours that are expected to be put on.
Oh, yeah, well, that's not the one that we've got in the
Yeah.
thing here,
Yeah,
okay?
why are we putting that one out?
Because it was a lot larger.
I think Delney can address that.
So, Vilni, just indicate which ones are hourly and which ones are not, and we don't care.
Okay.
Because at this particular point in time, we're getting down to the weeds, and we don't need to get into the weeds, because it's gonna be, you guys have determined how much you need to charge in order for us to basically be revenue neutral, okay? And if this is what you determine, unless anybody has a particular problem with the price, okay? I mean, some of the pricing in here is kinda high, but, I'm not gonna go there. So, but I'm not gonna go there because it's this caveat emptor, okay? You wanna have this work done, it's $160. You pay it or you don't pay it, okay? And that's it. So we don't care.
And it is an estimated cost.
Right, okay. So the thing right now is, okay, nothing gets done overnight, any procedure I've ever done, okay, usually needs at least 2 or 3 revisions before we finally get it right.
So these costs may not be what you get charged?
No, these costs basically, for the most part, are going to be the cost. However, in certain cases, that may need to be a little bit higher or probably, okay? Like, replace broken or cracked alteration windows, $1,200, okay? They're going to give
You
a,
put estimated cost for chargeable services in the title.
I don't think that, where the heck is, all mutual supplied parts, all mutual supplied parts.
It's under
labor,
limitations.
Resident supplied, residents, ran a ferry to be present. Estimated cost includes a $10 surcharge. It says so here in limitations. Estimated cost includes a $10 service charge, labor, and material as noted above.
It's there.
So that's in there under the asterisk for limitations. So in any case, so if there's a situation whereby we need to do an hourly thing, then make the notation. We don't care which ones are. And also, we're going to delete the words non-emergency maintenance and just use the word chargeable services.
Can I make a motion?
Make the motion.
I make a motion to change the resolution on page 505 to take those words out from the title. And also, in this page 305, we need to remove the words for non-emergency maintenance at 2 places, in the title as well as in the text. And the limitations are already spelled out, so we don't need to really say these are hourly rates or not. These are just an estimate. So whenever someone calls, depending on his need, I think the price will be worked out when the person visits or comes to do the service.
$10 for the visit before they can.
Yeah.
But if you put the hourly rate, it will clarify. I know it's spelled out,
Yeah.
but it will be more clear for somebody who's looking at it, doesn't have to flip the pages to read the fine line and to understand.
Because these are all estimate only
I
figures.
know, but
There are very
One
few
glance.
instances where it's an hourly rate.
Yeah.
like install alteration dishwasher plug-in only is $195, okay? Whether it takes them an hour or it takes them 3 hours, it's $195. I know that because I had my dishwasher replaced and they charged me $120 from the store. So, I mean, certain things are here are just that. Replace alteration ceiling light, $170, okay? That's for one light, okay? But there are certain instances, like was mentioned by Sue, whereby we got, replace molding, okay? Well, yeah, it may be a whole room, maybe a whole house, okay? And then in that particular case, we probably need to put hourly rate. So please take a look at it and see where we need to stipulate and be a little bit more fine-tuned, but we don't care which ones they are.
It's going to put us back another month.
No, that's what's gonna go to the board, okay? Because we don't care, and they're gonna change the emergency, the chargeable service system.
Well, I get another title part, but it sounds like you're asking her to change, the title is just like a Scribner error.
Correct.
But it's not an error, but it's just a Scribner thing. But asking her to change are you asking,
I'm saying in certain instances, it's an hourly rate, and in certain instances, it's a per actual procedure rate. Like changing
Well, I don't think
out
these
an
are-
alteration dishwasher is $195. That's not per hour.
but then, I don't know, if you start getting into I think maybe there would be another, maybe put an asterisk on some of those, and then at the end, say, costs may vary based on whatever. Because, here's my reason, if you get into the hourly rate and like, well, what? You mean those people make this much an hour? And then that puts us back in a position of like, well, no, this includes and blah, 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 accounting methods and full cost and blah, 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 blah. No, I don't want to go there. It's like, this is how much it costs. It costs $170, right? And most of the this is for replace and alteration ceiling light. 9 times out of 10, that's what it's going to cost, right? It's going to be $170. Maybe there's a little more on our side, a little more on their side, but it averages out, which is why we have these, right?
This is just an estimated cost for labor and any materials that are not like the actual baseboard, the nails that you would install.
Right.
Nothing here is identified as per job because there is no guarantees that a job will take an exact amount of time every time for every unit.
But, so,
Estimated above cost.
then you got to put the word
Okay, 'cause it
estimated
is
above
in the
cost.
back.
And we have that in there under
But it's
limitations.
But wait a second, in
It's got
third,
estimated cost.
Yes.
in third's list, okay, does it say estimated costs on there
I
or not?
don't have thirds available.
This
This
is-
is third's list, right?
No,
No.
this is United.
This is
This
our-
Well, I know it's
United's
United's
list.
list, but it's based on,
It was
Similar
based
to-
on Third's list, okay? And the thing right now is, okay, most of these things are per event. Replace a garbage disposal, one garbage disposal. Replace this, replace that. The one that she picked up was the molding, okay? And I don't even think anybody's gonna put any molding down, but, maybe there's one or two others. In
I
those
might.
cases, we can say it's per hour.
Cost, put the word estimate, and then everything would be clear.
It's there.
No, up at the top of the column.
No, I agree with Sue to make it simple, put the word estimate in the title.
Just put estimate instead of cost.
Yeah.
We can make the change.
Fine.
Estimate,
Scrivener error.
estimated.
Fine.
yeah.
Put the word estimate. I'm not gonna
You
get.
don't have to do anything else.
Fine. So, and I want this available for unless somebody has a heartburn, if we approve it, okay, I want this to be available at the board meeting, next meeting.
Okay.
Which is in March. So, based on those changes whereby we're when getting the word of the
Why
words.
can't you have it on the agenda this month?
Yeah, but March.
March, yeah.
Before you get-
Okay.
Isn't that our next meeting? Did I miss something?
I'm sorry.
Time goes by so quickly when you're having fun. So we're changing out the words, non-emergency maintenance goes away in both the sentence below and in the title, and we're going to add the words estimated to the word cost, and
No,
we're
just
done.
put estimate. Don't put
Perfect.
the word cost.
Okay, fine, estimate. Yes,
In your resolution, you're saying that you're going to charge a $50 charge if it's a no-show? Juanita, if you could help me remember, I believe at one time through maintenance construction, if we had an appointment that was not canceled ahead of time and it was a no-show, wasn't that charged $250 and not $50? For a no-show?
It's 50.
I think $250 is
I
a little
think-
bit out there, to be
I
perfectly
was
honest.
going back to
Yeah, okay.
a few years ago, and it was 250 at that time? No? Okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean, $50 I think is reasonable for a no-show, okay? It's standard within the industry, I think.
In the beginning, it was 10.
Yeah, and I thought they,
25.
and then I thought they, at one time, about 3 years ago, the discussion was 250 at the time. Okay, I apologize for that. The other item I was thinking of is when a member calls in to Property Services. At that time, the particular staff person is going to say that your estimate cost for this particular job is going to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to
exactly.
clarify that.
And the thing right now, based on what Janie just said, okay, since this is excuse me, wrong terminology, dischargeable services thing is going to go out as a piece of paper, maybe we need to add, oh, you've got it there, never mind. Fair to be present at the time, $50. Never mind, I had a brain fart there for a minute.
It's still
Sorry,
$250.
senior moment. So, never mind. Who seconds the motion?
I second that motion.
Any objections to what we just discussed? Without objection? With those changes made? We're good for the board meeting in March. Our next board meeting. Okay, and then we got the review of the 2020 project priorities, which is all on you, Melanie.
We are looking for consideration to defund specific United Mutual projects and programs listed in Attachment 1. To give a background, GRF M&C Committee recently reviewed the adopted 2020 capital improvement projects and recommended the board consider defunding several projects that were not immediately required. Staff was then directed to identify projects that were on United Board that may consider postponing for future fiscal years without deferring any required maintenance in order to increase available funding for other pressing priorities. In your attachment 1, you have a list of your current projects and programs that are currently active in 2020. As we go through, we can discuss any particular items that you'd like to, but I would like to just get to the ones where staff has reviewed it and proposed a possible defund, whether it's a whole or in partial. The foundation program is an area that you can possibly consider for defunding. And this project is available to take the $43,836 and to move it into another priority that you would like. If there are any items that would come up as part of a need to repair, it can be covered under the building structures budget as listed under item 1 on your project log. And there is currently $134,000 in that budget.
And this one right now, okay, this is for this year.
Yes.
Next year, we can revisit this whole thing, correct?
Yes, as part of the business planning for 2021.
Exactly, okay.
My
Yes.
question, item number 5,
Yes.
defunding this project, how many foundations do we have that need repairs? Maybe that's an urgent thing. If the building collapses as a result, then what?
Wait,
Yes,
wait.
please.
Okay, go ahead.
So that's a contingency fund, and when we receive a call goes into resident services, we go out, if someone has a crack or there's something obvious that they see, maybe they pulled their carpet back and there's a crack in the concrete. We go out, we investigate it. If we feel that there's further investigation needed by a PE, then we bring in our consultant and they take a look at the foundation and they provide a report. If there's a repair that's suggested or recommended, then we take care of that repair through this funding. Right now, currently in United, we have one active that we are repairing. However, that fund for the foundations, what we've decided to do, or what we think is a good recommendation, we don't typically spend the building structure fund because it's a contingency as well. And those two items are typically related. So what we decided to do or recommend was to remove the funding that you have in place for the foundations and just use the building structure fund that we have in place now.
Yeah, and that's what Velney had said, so.
Yeah, but, I mean,
Go ahead.
but wait a second, young man, come back, we're not done with you.
Is this bulletproof?
Okay, so obviously, we just came out of a rather grueling budget process, and I know you guys and how smart you are, and so that 134,880 came from somewhere in the building structures. So are you anticipating something not to be as you had predicted, or is this like kind of just a standard contingency on a percentage basis? Or I'm just wondering how you think it's going to, because I know you have an answer, how it's going to absorb that foundations program money.
So we did look at, the expenditures from past years to kind of help us, guide us in this decision. So originally, an analyst sat down and counted how many buildings and decided somewhere that a certain percentage of these buildings may need attention, may need some repair work. And so it's really a guesstimate, and it was done by an analyst way back when. So we keep that as a contingency. If it's not spent, it goes back into the reserves. But it's, we never know what or how many of these incidents are going to take place. And if there were more, it wouldn't be like that, well, we don't have enough funding. We would come to you and tell you, hey, this year we have, 50 of these incidents. We don't know why, but we have 50, and we're going to require more funding. Or it just goes, it's typically more money going back into the reserves from year to year. But it is a contingency to have as a placeholder in case we do have, these events happening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, continue.
I want to move to item number 7 that is on your project log, which is actually the exterior paint program. In 2020, we had added funding to change your building signs. This is not something that is an immediate need for your buildings. Your building signs are adequate, they're just not the larger, high reflective signs. That would allow you to take $50,000 out of that program to fund somewhere else as well.
Yeah, I talked to Ernesto about that, and I thought we were just going to leave this money in there because, it's either pay me now or pay me later. And if they're going to do it as part of the external paint program, then it was a lot cheaper to do it now as part of the program, okay, than to go back and put them up, okay, because then you got to bring the staging, and you got to do this, and you got to bring a high-low and what have you. And I didn't realize that he was going to do that, okay? I mean, to me, right now, defunding that one there for those signs, I think it's, at the end, when we then do it, we're going to have to do it on, somebody's going to actually get the signs and put them up, and that means there's labor involved with that. If you're doing it part of the paint program, okay, then they already got the staging up and the man lift and what have you, so I don't see why we would do that. That's my personal opinion.
I would
Yes.
rather leave it, that 50,000 is a peanut compared to the total cost there, 1,087,000. So, and as Carl said, it's just, on the way, they can put the signs. So why try to save 50,000 for a later cost that might be like 2 times that or something?
Yes.
And I think one peanut added to another peanut will feed an elephant, Mr. Cash. So I think we could always do it like later. It's not like those buildings aren't marked, and I don't,
Yeah.
well,
Exactly.
but they're marked now.
But it's damaged building address signs will be replaced. Only damaged ones.
Yeah,
In the description.
I'm looking.
damaged building address signs are replaced. It's not all.
I thought, well, it sounded to me that, well, it sounds to me like it's apples and oranges. It sounds like he's defunding the part with those big, huge, ginormous signs.
Right.
And
So it was a
replacing
decision.
damaged ones.
Yes.
It was a
Maybe you could
decision that was
explain that.
made, during the budget process, that you wanted to add giant signs that Third implemented into their program. And so that's an extra 50,000 to address those large signs instead of replacing like for like. So that's what we're saying. You don't have to change over to the large sign. You can keep the signs that you have now.
And damaged ones will be replaced like
Damaged
for
ones
like?
will continue to be replaced.
Yes, those were included in the original signs.
Yes.
Yes, for the football giant signs. So we're bringing this to you to say, you know, if you want to rethink it, if you say you want to save that 50,000 and not put up the big signs, here's your opportunity to do that.
And the big signs would not be on all buildings, only on the ones that are damaged?
None of them.
No, it would be,
Damage would be like for like.
Correct.
yeah.
Damage would be for like
Like
and
for
the
like for
entire,
damage.
Yeah, that doesn't make
Yes.
sense. Putting good money after bad, then, doesn't make sense. Yes, Walter?
Was the reason for did the reason for the large signs have anything to do with emergency?
Yes, they did, because a lot of people were complaining, they didn't know where the buildings were, what have you. When Third put up their signs, everybody said, wow, I really know where I am here.
No, I
Now,
was referring to like fire emergency or paramedics. Is that the only reason?
I don't think so, because I think they use GPS and what have you, okay?
Thank you.
It was basically for the residents, okay, they get lost. I get lost sometimes too. So, I mean, at this particular point in time, my opinion would be to keep this funding, because I think, you know, you're paying now for something while they're up there with all the scaffolding and with all the man lifts and what have you, okay? Why would you not want to do that now? But I didn't realize, because when I talked over with Ernesto with this, okay, that's what we discussed, and I didn't realize that he was going to defund it, so I guess another discussion happened after we had discussed it. So, does anybody have any thoughts about defunding this one?
I think we should.
Let's vote on it.
Why don't we need money other places? It's not like we don't need the money.
So, okay, who was in favor of defunding this particular item? Who's in favor of not defunding it? It doesn't get defunded.
could we have a motion about the foundation program? Did we have?
The foundation program's being defunded, as far as I know. I have nobody saying, because it's going, building structure, I mean, it's not going away, it's just being reallocated.
It'll be
to
absorbed.
buildings. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Sue had a question.
Sue?
I have a question. Why are we defunding? What is the logic?
The foundations, because it's a
No,
contingent.
Why are we going through this exercise?
Because we have possibility of utilizing money to basically address drainage and other things right now that are, the foundation, if we do something with the drainage issues and the gutters and what have you, we may not have foundation problems, okay? This is what we've been discussing for a while, okay? Because a lot of the water's coming down and undermining some of these foundations. So we're trying to find money to basically address drainage issues and gutters and leaders and that type of thing, okay? We've had that in this discussion in this room a number of times regarding that. In fact, Ken Deppie came by and made presentations on that. So that's what we're looking for money for, okay? And that's the reason why, because in GRF, as I mentioned at the beginning, okay, they have projects. We have maintenance, okay? But there are certain maintenance items that we really didn't need to do this year, and we could possibly utilize that money for something that may turn out to be a little bit more important. I'm sorry, Melanie, continue.
The last item that staff is proposing for defund is row 18, which is part of the pest control for termites. The Davis-Sterling Act requires us to maintain the buildings in regards to pest control as termite control, local treats, and fumigation. but it does not mandate us to provide accommodations and/or move resident-owned potted plants. There is a cost of $59,373 that is budgeted in this current year that allows for hotel accommodations for members during the fumigation process. It's not a requirement, but it has been offered to the mutual members over the years.
That seems to be a sacred cow.
I think it's a sacred.
And the thing right now is, I also understand that we're putting everybody in the airs, okay? And we can possibly go down the road to the Holiday Inn or what have you, okay, and get a better rate.
We did change the hotel this year. Eris was charging us a lot more last year per seasons, especially while they had golf tournaments, and they caused a lot of issues during our fumigation process. We weren't able to fume for 2 months out of the year due to the availability of their rooms. Purchasing division did take out the hotels and rebid it, and we did find a new hotel for both mutuals.
So at this particular point in time, we have a lower price for accommodations. The plants, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what the story is on that, but I don't believe that we can basically, if we're putting these people out, even though it wasn't our fault that the termites showed up, okay, but if we're putting them out, then we just can't not just give them someplace to stay. I mean, that's my personal opinion. Yes, Sue?
The Towers has offered us, they have 40 apartments, and they would be willing to give us at a lower price usage of their studio apartments. And that may be something we ought to look into, keeping the money into the village. And that has a kitchen, and they could take their pets with them, which would reduce the cost of the person being put out of their home, which may be a preferable way to go. So they have approached us to do that. So it may be a way to look at a lower cost.
Okay, so right now, okay, we're in a situation whereby are we willing to sacrifice our sacred cow with regard to actual accommodations? Where we go for the accommodations, it's probably cheaper to go with the Towers, but on the floor right now is whether or not we're going to defund the accommodations. As far as I'm concerned with regard to the plants, I would defund that, okay? 'cause- Neighboring, okay, that's what I would say, okay? But as far as the accommodations are concerned, unless somebody here on the dais here has a particular problem, I wouldn't defund the accommodations, but I would see about possibly going to a cheaper place, which actually keeps the money in the community, okay? And that's something to think about. Yes?
I'm not positive, but I think the tower units are not furnished even with a bed.
No, they're completely furnished.
They're furnished? Okay.
Yes, Elsie?
Actually, I had a big speech prepared for the hotel business, but it also applies to the plant moving business based on the practical, calling neighboring would be primo, but on the moving the pots business, what if they just, I can't do it, and I won't do it, or I'm a little bit ditzy, or I'm out of town, and I would hate to see an entire project, stopped because, now what's the deal? We just kill their plants if they aren't moved, or can it stop the project?
No, as long as a person is
That's what I'm
not in the
asking.
building, okay, they'll termite proof.
Okay, well then, yeah, all right then, well, that makes a big difference, because, well, my building was supposed to be tenanted 2 years ago, so I don't mean to make this about me, but I've seen how one person, and also that poor lady that,
Yeah.
so I've seen it in my area twice, where one person stopped the whole process and you go to the end of the queue. So
That's because that person.
I think we're making it as easy as possible, but that was really my hotel
Well,
speech, sorry.
I don't think there are many people that have the plants is an issue, but when they do, they have an issue, okay? And we're not saying that their little, chihuahua, okay, is going to, they're gonna go into this hotel where they got pets.
They have to pay for,
But the
yeah,
thing
they have
right
to pay
now is,
for it.
okay, I don't think, I think we can defund the plants, okay, but we can't defund the sacred cow of just putting him in a hotel someplace. We can find cheaper places to go, however. That's my point, okay? Anybody? Okay, let me ask the question, okay? Who would be in favor of defunding the plants?
Just the plan?
Just the plants?
Can't you just cover them up?
No,
No,
they'll
because
dry.
it just basically becomes noxious in there.
But that is not broken up into parts.
I understand, but
Yeah,
we're,
wheels anyway. Why give them more work?
no, I'm asking if we're defunding the plants, not the hotel, because at this particular point in time, does anybody, okay, let me get back to it. Does anybody want to defund the accommodations? Right, okay. Does anybody say we can defund the plants?
It's 13.
Wow, a lot of plant lovers here, okay.
I love plants too.
Okay, we're not defunding anything, it looks like.
Wow. It's good though.
I would just like to bring up the point that this has been a bone of contention because we only do it for the 2 nights that we're tenting it. And we do not offer any rebates or hotel rooms or whatever for people who are out of their unit for longer periods of time because we're in there.
Water
cleaning up their
intrusion?
floor, whatever, that's our responsibility, but they have to pay for their own accommodations outside, and it's usually more than 2 nights. So this is just very minor, 2 nights for 2 months.
Well, then you do like I used to do with my employees, say then fine, we'll take away hotels for the people that are getting termited, so we'll all be the same. Right?
I think this is a larger
Harsh,
issue to
but-
be discussed, okay? At this particular point in time, we're only talking about the termite thing. With regard to water intrusion or other things, okay, I'm not, this is not part of this thing here, correct? So right now, we're not defunding anything on this. But we are going to try to see about
This one.
utilizing, I would like to see if we can try to utilize our friends at the towers, okay, and we might be able to get a better rate.
We can definitely ask purchasing to reach out to the towers.
Please.
But it won't go into effect until the 2021 as we are getting ready to fume for this year.
Okay. Okay. And what, okay, now, this is the other thing, okay, I had this discussion with Ernesto, and I see that it's, we decided that we're still on this, okay, but she said that the last one was the defunding for the fumigation, but then we had where the heck is it? Shepherd's Crook. Where the heck's the Oh, there it is, okay. Item number 15, Shepherd's Crook. I discussed with Ernesto the fact that last year we had to go with either 1,100 or 1,500 feet of fence, okay? And we only need to give them 300 feet of fence, okay? So I discussed with him the fact that we would defund everything except for 300 feet of fence to abide by the city's rules, and I'm seeing that that's not being addressed.
No, it is. So we're not recommending it, but we did put in there, if you wish to go with the 300 feet, I don't believe that the number was correct on here, but I can tell you because it's my program. If we're going to do 300 feet, I would say we need 40,000 to do that 300 feet, and that will include the removal of any trees or shrubbery that's in the way. So I would say that's a fair estimate to keep in there. That would leave 125, if I'm not mistaken, to be defunded.
Right.
And we would
and-
only
but-
do the three.
But that's not what this
100
said
feet.
here. It says that we're only going to save $33,000.
I know, she.
Oh, okay, pay no
That-
attention to the
don't-
man
don't pay
behind the
attention
screen?
to that.
Okay.
That's, so if we were to estimate 110 per linear feet, that's what we would be at. I don't know how she got that number. I would say make it a little fatter. If we don't use it, fine, but we have come across where trees are growing into the wall, and we have to fix the wall, remove the tree, and I want to make sure that there's enough funding to cover that.
And that's a it's a very good point, okay, to do that, okay? But last year, I went through this with a couple of the people in in the community, okay, regarding the fact that we were changing out various areas that really were not required to be changed out. So if you remember that one along El Toro Road, and the thing right now is, okay, we discussed this with Ernesto and found out that we really only have to do 300 feet for United. So we were going to look a lot closer and see where those areas are that we really feel they are needed. Along El Toro Road, we didn't think they were needed, except we can repair the barbed wire by just putting in a section. If it's cut, we can just tie it again or what have you, okay? We can't put in new barbed wire, but we can repair what we've got there. So we would do that and only put the 300 feet this year in those areas that were required per our security review, okay? And that's what we're going, that's what I'd like to do. So with regard to defunding this, we defund everything except for 300 linear feet plus whatever is needed for any sort of wall remediation or what have you. And you're saying right now that you would fund it for $40,000. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. But can I clarify something on the CUP that, so the deal was made with the city and it was made with the GM's office way back when they were doing the CUP for the entire community. Because, and let me just explain how that came about. They were going to charge us a fee for a CUP at every section that we would replace. So the thought process at the time, no, let's get a CUP for all of it. And the city said, well, if you do that, then you're going to be required to replace 900 linear feet a year throughout the community. Well, GRF only has 2,000 linear feet of roughly 60,000 linear feet for the perimeter. So if they decided to do theirs in 1 year and be done with it, that would mean that it wouldn't no longer be 300 per mutual, it'd be 450 per mutual. I just want to make that clear.
And if we come to that determination whereby it's got to be 450, then we'll abide by whatever rules we have to abide by. Okay?
And that's fine. And where we place the shepherd's, or the barbed wire with the shepherd's crook, those areas that we were replacing, there was a meeting with the committee and they asked us to go to security, find out the areas that security would recommend we do first. And that's how that came about. It wasn't some random decision we made. It was based on security recommendation.
That's correct, okay. But the thing right now is, okay, we started over there by the old Vons or whatever they call it now, okay? The Aldi's, okay? And we're working our way around, okay? And then last year we hit a wall because I got tons of phone calls and stuff and what have you, okay, from people making all sorts of problems about the fact that, oh, it's not as good as and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, the barbed wire was still in good condition. So I think we should basically, unless I get pushback from the committee here, okay, I think we should do our 300 feet. That's what we're legally responsible to do, and we should do it in those areas that security had pointed out for this year. Do it in the security, the areas where security has pointed it out, and we'll do 300 feet of that this year, and we'll put in a couple of extra bucks here, as you mentioned, for any sort of wall remediation or what have you. And that's what this thing should represent. Now, does anybody have a particular problem with that?
I make a motion to reduce, defund anything in excess of 40,000 is what you need?
That's correct.
Anything in excess of 40,000 we defund.
Anybody have a disagreement with that? That's it.
Can I make one last clarification? Your $250 for the no-show, it's absolutely correct, but it's only for one program, and that is the Pushmatic program, because we're paying a subcontractor to show up and be rejected. Just for clarity on that.
Yes, Brian.
Yeah, I have maybe a general comment, and that's, you know, we're spending $2 million in moisture and water intrusion remediation this past year. And so that's money we cannot control, costs we cannot control. So I'm wondering if we've looked at these numbers in the context of what will give us more control over the budget. And so, you know, that's where the Shepherd's Crook example is a very good example. to delay that one, and maybe those resources could be put into reducing our liabilities related to water intrusion.
With regard to water intrusion, that's why a couple of years ago, or last year, I forget when it was, when Gary was the treasurer, okay, we pushed for the fact that we were going to, the water intrusion program, the strain pipe remediation program, okay, was upended to, it was now accelerated, okay, from whatever it was to now over a 5 or 6 year period, okay? So we are now putting more money into doing that remediation, okay? And the fact was that we couldn't do any more than that because the contractor only could take care of so much work. So if most of these are happening as a result of drain lines, and we got some of that information from Belny, okay, regarding 77% or whatever that turns out to be, okay, and I suspect that most of that in United had to do with drain lines and not supply lines, because the supply line problem is mostly a problem in Third, because they're using a lower grade copper pipe and for the soldering that they used. Then we're doing as best we can to remediate those lines so they don't leak in the future, but we're still going to get ones that are going to leak no matter what. So do you have a suggestion as to what we would want to do beyond what we're doing?
Well, that's where I think the data is so critical. So I'd like to learn more about what those plumbing-related leaks are, and if it is supply line or sewer line, and then we can make the decision about moving resources like this Shepherd's Crook savings we just did to putting it on those sort of things.
And you had that email from me.
I do, and that was forwarded over to the finance division to
Right.
start pooling the data that you have requested. Keep in mind that, yes, plumbing leak can apply to many types of leaks, whether it's supply, whether it's under slab, whether it is a drain line or stoppages that are caused by a single fixture. And so those are not covered as you would epoxy a line.
Yeah, understood that. And the thing right now is, okay, that's why he's saying right now, some of these are oops, okay? You know, the toilet bowl overflows, okay? And it had nothing to do with a pipe or what have you. It just happened to do with whatever, the BM or something. So I just used the right terminology. So in any case, I mean, these things happen. So these are oopses that you just put in a contingency budget for the oopses. But some of the other things, like the remediation of the lines, we're trying to accelerate that program so that we have less of those happening. Yes, Janie?
On that subject of accelerating as far as doing our sewer and our drain lines, sure, we can come up with more money, but at the same time, we have a contractor that's doing a lot of this work for us. And, you know, and I know, we have to work with staff to find out if that contractor can expand himself with another crew, even if we do come up with the money in the budget.
Right, and that's one of the things that Ernesto pointed out when we accelerated to where we are right now, okay? They hit a wall as to how much they could actually do. So that's where we are today, and we have that 6-year or 5-year, do you remember what it is, Juanita? 6-year or 5-year program that we now have?
I don't remember it either, but I do know that I was in a building and I talked to the people that were doing the work, and this was a crew out of Florida. This was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So they bring them in from all over their company, all over the states to come and work for us. But it's just trying to get the right amount of people to come in and work, the crews.
Well, we want the data. We asked Velney to provide the data. Based on the data, we will look at it and see where it is that we can make some changes or some improvements or what have you, okay? But once we get the data, and that's it. So anyway, so that's it on the defunding, right? Yes. We didn't defund much, but at least every little bit helps.
No, 125 plus the 43.
Plus.
It comes out to 168,336.
Okay, $40,000 out of the
Item 5.
Yes,
$43,836.
$43,836.
For that one, okay.
Plus 125.
Plus 100,
Right.
more than 200,000.
Plus the
Plus the
consultants, that was $20,000 that we, the
Oh, yes.
consultant, that's right,
The TEC.
220K more.
or whatever.
So anybody want to readdress those big signs? Think how great it would be if we defund the signs.
Take the plants out.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, everybody has a particular sacred cow with plants, I guess, whatever. So, you know, in any case, I guess that's it on the priorities. Anybody ever got any other questions on priorities?
No question on priorities, but I do want to say something about this epoxy lining. I see some of the plumbing clogs are removed with a, what do you call that, snake? And I think that is dangerous for the epoxy lining. So somebody has to check in on that.
Well, the thing right now is, my understanding is, once the epoxy lining goes in, they're not supposed to use the snake that looks like a Roto-Rooter snake, okay? They use another kind of snake, but I don't know.
I've seen some being used, the regular snakes being used, and that's
But
not
is
healthy
that,
for
is
what
that
we do.
in a line that's already epoxy lined?
Well, in my own building, my building was epoxy lined.
Oh, okay, well, then
I
that
did see
that answers that question. So, I guess your people should have been told as to what the protocol is after the lines are epoxy lined. I'm sure that went around. I would assume that went around, because that would be a waste of money if the epoxy lining cannot take a steel snake. I don't know if it can or it can't.
Cannot.
Yes?
Can I add two concerns, the epoxy lining? Concerning the letter that you send out for that, one, the phone number's not being well maintained. I'm getting a lot of complaints that the people are calling for information and nobody's returning their calls. I actually had to come down here to facilities to get an answer to my question. The process is excellent. The guys doing the work, when they get there, they tell you exactly what's going on. I have no problem with that. But you put out a letter, and then you threaten them in one paragraph that they're going to be taken to discipline hearing if they're not home. You could kind of ease up on that.
Can I get a copy of that letter?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
But they do an amazing job, and when they're there the first day, they explain everything's going on, but your letter kind of leaves it hanging, and that's why you're getting all the phone calls.
And the response
All right.
on the phone call? Okay. The total amount of the defunding would be $188,336. To include the Shepherd's Crook program and the foundation program, and then the TEC.
Yes, please. I'm taking the CAI course, and it was very eye-opening last night. And one of the things that they strongly suggest is a matrix for responsibility. Now, the only matrix that we have is financial, who signs off on what level. But they said it's kind of like our chargeable services, only expanded. We just have a checklist that says, if this is wrong, it's responsibility of the resident, it's the responsibility of the mutual. And we could say chargeable services if it's the resident. But that way we have one document. I'm sure for us it would be more than 1 or 2 pages, but
that they can look at and say, okay, this is what's wrong, who's responsible for it? Because that's probably the biggest question that we get in resident advisory and calls and all. I don't know who's responsible for this. Is this me? Is it the mutual? So I'd like to suggest that you look into developing a matrix, a responsibility matrix.
For M&C.
Right, because that's what most of the questions.
Excuse me, Juanita? How's that different from the, I'm sorry. I
The
was working-
financial is just the sign-off. In other words, if you have a project that's $25,000, only the general manager has to sign off. If you have a project that's $50,000, then. so there-
not
that's-
that part. I thought you were talking about like what the resident is responsible for and what the mutual is
Yeah,
responsible for.
we don't have that right now.
But isn't that what you get during the close of escrow? That sheet that says, this is all, I've seen them, this is all your responsibility, this is all our responsibility? I mean, how is what you're talking about different than?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that one. I'll have to look at that and see what that particular sheet.
Holy cow, because I've been telling everybody, it's in here, and I
Now, the-
think, I mean, I know I had one, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen one that's really nice. Mine was a little bit not as prettily printed. Yes.
I think you're referring to the resales inspection. That is part of your escrow packet that would identify.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but that's
exactly.
just the inspection.
Well, so, okay, so that's what I'm just saying, how.
Yeah, but that might be a good starting point if we start
So
that
I
and
just wanted to
expand
know
it.
how what you were proposing is different than the
Right.
resale inspection sheet.
Now, we just had an example today. Mrs. R came in and talked about, that something that is her responsibility, that she's claiming it is ours. So she's right. We should define it clearly.
What was the CAI
Just want a
specifically
clarification on the
addressing
difference,
the
that's all.
matrix of responsibilities between the owners or the, whatever, the residents and the association?
Yeah, I've come up to that.
Okay. With regard to M&C. So why don't we put that as a future agenda item, and once Ernesto comes back, we can talk about what that really means, okay? Just, it's a placeholder right now.
But maybe have some sample, what you call them, inspections?
The resales inspections?
Yes, maybe some samples of resale inspections so we can see the difference. Thanks.
Okay, anybody have any other comments or questions on the items for future agenda? We're going to add, what are we going to, how did we write it up for that additional item that we're adding?
Strategic locations for EV stations.
Right.
There's two, the strategic locations of, in the village, and also developing a responsibility matrix between the members and the association in regards to M&C.
Terrific. Okay, and,
Time to use your gavel.
well,
Time to use your gavel.
hold on, because now we got committee member comments. Anybody have any comments? Yes, Janie?
I want to just thank Cash for all of his hard work and his group and all on putting this neighboring project together.
Yeah, thank the group, not just me. The group did it.
Walter? Reza?
I have one question regarding this TC issue. This report that they have produced to me is common sense. It's not worth paying any money for it. I mean, it's just a common sense things in the whole report. And we paid $50,000 for this?
30.
Well,
But the thing right now is, okay, this is the reason why we are not putting another $20,000 into it. And the research group is going to try to basically do some of this work, at least to provide some insights as to what's going to happen with regard to this. So this new research group, which is the VETF, is going to work on some of these things.
The other question I have is that when this task force started, the idea was to look at the infrastructure based on the demand of each unit. 2,000-3,000 houses here, the demand is increasing, so how do we inform SCE to take this into account? I don't know whether this is being pursued or not at all.
Well, if you talk, Chris pointed out the fact that SCE said to us that if, not in writing, that if we have an increased capacity in certain areas, okay, then they would change the transformer and the conductors in that area if it was required to be done. So
No, my
we
question-
haven't gone through that level of detail yet because for the most part, the 100 amps that we have in our manners, okay, has been adequate. And the only time it's really come up now is the fact that these EV chargers where we have not enough capacity in our carports.
Well, the fact that it's been adequate, I question that, because a lot of people individually has increased it, but because it's not holistic, then the system has been able to cope with it. That was one thing. The second, the issue why it came out, because SCE was changing the transformer, switch keys, etc., underground ones, like to like. The idea was to inform them to see if they can accommodate this, because these have got to be custom made to fit in the existing vaults underground. The idea was to inform them to take this into account for future. Now, I haven't heard anything about that. Has this been addressed at all or not?
Well, I guess my question is, okay, I've been informed, and I may be wrongfully informed, okay, that anytime they're changing out a transformer, they're going to a higher rated transformer because it's cheaper for them to do the better transformer in today's technology than to put in the old one. So all of these new transformers that we're getting in here are higher capacity. Is that not correct?
I wouldn't say that.
I think so.
Well,
We're going to have to double check before I give you a formal answer.
Okay.
I'm almost positive you are correct.
You
I just
see,
don't want to.
there are
It was a cost issue, is my understanding.
Yeah, there are also two things. The fact that the technology is improving, they can also decrease the size to make it
That's
cheaper.
correct, they can do that too.
So that necessarily doesn't mean it's gonna go to a higher rating. So these are things that we have to inform them, but I don't know whether, my question was whether that has been taken care of by TEC or some
No.
other.
TEC just basically asked them for information, and because of the fact that the Homeland Security and what have you, okay, said that it was considered to be secret or what have you, okay, they wouldn't give it out. So, did you have another quick?
I was just going to say, typically a transformer takes a year, and the only time they'll replace one for one is if it's an emergency and they got it in stock.
Okay.
Yeah, but this, I asked them at the time, and I tried to communicate with SCE as well, and they said they're changing it like to like on all of them. They're just renewing the old ones with the new ones. They're not doing anything else.
Brian?
No comment.
Elsie?
Yeah, I would like to thank Billy and Miss Maria for all their work and all their patience with all these ginormous egos in the room. So thank you very much.
I would like to extend that not just to them, but to even to our staff to stick through and come up with such nice explanations for us. Thank you very much.
And thank you, everybody, for your insights.
Before you close, I'd just like to know, is there another step or somebody else I should talk to about proposing a cement walkway between building 245 and 246 on?
The thing right now is that
Staff will review.
M&C is the place for this right
Yes.
now, and they've got that information, so they will basically look into it and get with us.
Yes.
And who is
This is.
Maintenance
this
and
is-
construction.
Oh, I see.
That's what we do here.
So she's at the right place.
Yes.
Yeah, right, as I said.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Yes.
were in the right place.
You're in the right place.
That's what
Thank
I-
you.
They're gonna have to cost it out.
Let me say one more thing. Special thank you to you for sticking through the whole meeting.
Yeah, it was very-
Appreciate that.
Bravo.
Wow, very interesting. I think that's really great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's a compliment to us, okay? Usually they're boring and argumentative, okay? But for the most part, it went okay. All right, well, thank you, everybody, and yes, we can close this meeting.
So will somebody let me know